Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this much delayed hangout of the Star Trek rebooted trilogy with myself,
Yeah,
the Watcher, and Alan Caylow, of course. Months after the release of Star Trek Beyond, we do apologise. It was scheduled to be months ago, but life got in the way, as per usual. So we're going to be reflecting on all three films. That's Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, and of course Star Trek Beyond. This will conclude the three hangouts that we've done, and yeah, so let's press on. So, if it's all right with you, Jack, I'm going to let Alan start, as this is his favourite Star Trek film. So, Alan, would you be able to give us your thoughts on the 2009 reboot known as Star Trek?
yeah, sure. I recently rewatched the first two movies, the 2009 Star Trek to Darkness, and I saw Beyond naturally very recently. And I'm just going to say right off the bat that the reboot movies, while they seem to have their critics for fuck knows why, I think the reboot movies are overall are great, and I think the first one, the 2009 reboot, is the best of the three. With all due respect to the other two films, I was really blown away by Star Trek 2009. I mean the movie's just called Star Trek, but just to identify it better, I'll call it Star Trek 2009. I was blown away by the film because it had a lot riding on it. I mean, the previous movie, Star Trek Nemesis, was a disaster in
Oh,
one, and the Star Trek film franchise had been put on ice for a few years. I guess, let's see, I think Nemesis came out in 2002.
yeah,
Yeah,
along
same
with a
year.
load of other shit movies.
Yeah, 2002. So basically, there hadn't been a Star Trek movie for 7 years. And also, Star Trek Enterprise had been canceled or was recently canceled. Or actually canceled, I guess, in 2005, I guess. So basically, Star Trek, the franchise, was basically ailing at this point, and it needed a really good shot of adrenaline to bring it back. And what was going to bring it back was going to be a really, really good movie. And in my opinion, J.J. Abrams really, really hit the jackpot with this one. His first challenge was that, first of all, we were going to be revisiting the classic characters of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and the rest of the original crew, but obviously all the roles had to be recast with a younger crew now. Shatner and the original crew were obviously too old to play the parts anymore, so they needed a brand new cast.
Yeah.
And that was the first challenge because I couldn't see anybody else but William Shatner playing Captain Kirk. I couldn't see anybody else but Leonard Nimoy playing Spock, and so on and so on. But I tell you, man, this new cast, they are terrific. Every single one of them. They're great. And they really, really.
They surprised me as well, considering
Yeah,
how iconic the characters are and how iconic the original cast were. You're like, holy shit, you didn't think it could happen.
I know. No, everybody in the cast, they're perfect, all of them. And I mean, from Chris Pine as the new Captain Kirk, Zachary Quinto as the new Spock, and all the way down the line through the whole crew, everybody in the cast are just wonderful in these new parts. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised by how good they were, how wonderful their performances were, and how they kind of pay respect to the original cast, but they don't do, carbon copies of them.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when I watch Chris Pine as the young Kirk, I mean, I can definitely see echoes and I can hear echoes here and there of William Shatner, but he's not doing a carbon copy
No,
of
I don't.
um,
I don't remember William Shatner ever getting into fights in a bar or ever laying with women in his Star Trek adventures. Well, at least not that
right.
I remember.
Right. So at the same time, I mean, there's also kind of a different spin on his character, a somewhat different spin on all the iconic characters, and yet there's enough of the original cast's blueprint on
Yeah,
these new on the new cast but at the same time, they follow the blueprint, but they're not copying them, which I think is good. I mean, you can say the same thing. Every actor who's followed Sean Connery as James Bond, they're following the blueprint, I suppose, that Connery laid down, but they're not copying Sean Connery.
There's plenty more tits in the sea.
Yeah, exactly. So I really tip my hat to Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, and everybody in the new cast. They're all.
I think. Sorry to interrupt you. Zachary Quinto especially. He's almost a lookalike as well. It's kind of scary how good he is in comparison to Nimoy, and he does look like a younger version of Nimoy. I think they've casted quite like in terms of the looks. They've actually got really good lookalikes as well. I'm not so much in the Sulu and Chekhov area of things, but the main few, and obviously not Bones, but like Uhura, Kirk, Spock, they look like some of the originals, in my opinion, anyway.
Right, and they have enough. And as I said, they have enough of the original cast's mannerisms without copying them. I mean, just for example, when we first see Carl Urban as McCoy, where he's reluctantly getting on board the ship, that the shuttle that's going to take him and Kirk and the others off to the academy, and he's going into a spiel about how his wife recently divorced him and left him with nothing except his bones, and he's doing his little comic spiel as McCoy, and I can't help but remember when I saw this in the theater how everybody in the audience was kind of laughing in approval, like yeah, this is going to work. That's Bones, Carl Urban. I mean that's the character. He nailed it, and I also remember just how the audience were overall. They were just as pleasantly surprised and pleased as I was that this new cast they're going to work. They really are going to work.
Yeah,
and they do. And let's see. And as far as J.J. Abrams' direction, I thought his direction was superb on the movie. I thought he made the film with a lot of love and a lot of care, with a lot of respect to the original Star Trek. But I also see he also wanted to give this franchise a really good shot of adrenaline, because the franchise was definitely ailing at this point. So, but I think he did that. I know he's been criticized for putting in the lens flares in the first two movies. You don't have them in the third film because he's not directing the third film. But there's the appearance of lens flares. But I've watched both Star Trek 2009 and Into Darkness very, very recently in the last few weeks. And to be totally honest with you, the lens flares don't bother me. They don't bother me at all. And I understand his reason for putting in the lens flares, because he wanted to give the film a futuristic, sci-fi-ish kind of look. And while it may annoy somebody out there, it didn't annoy me. I thought it looked pretty cool, and it doesn't render the film unwatchable in any means. No, so it really didn't bother me. So I'm glad that I was able to confirm that by rewatching the first two movies again recently. That no, the lens flares don't bother me, and I think they do look kind of cool. The movie is still more than watchable. You needn't worry about that. So
it's not like every 2 seconds. I mean, it's more constant, I think, in the sequel, personally. But I think some shots they work, some shots they don't. I mean, he does overuse them, but I don't think it's like. I mean, if you have epilepsy, you might want to avoid this film. But I mean that with the greatest respect.
Yeah, but as you say, it's not like he's using it every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. JJ, do you want us to watch the film or not?
Yeah, really. I like the concept of the movie, how they were able to introduce this new young cast, introducing it that they're in an alternate universe. So you can still have the original cast, the original crew, and all of their adventures, but this is an alternate universe with an alternate timeline, and therefore an alternate crew.
Well, but it sort of is, but it sort of isn't. It's sort of a prequel, but it's sort of not. It's in that sense.
Yeah. Kind of both at the same time. Yeah, and I thought that was really neat. I thought I really enjoyed that twist that he puts on it. And I mean, there's different changes. I mean, for example, on the original TV series, Captain Pike was like a fellow, you know, he wasn't a mentor to Captain Kirk. He was like a fellow captain, another
He
captain.
was like a commanding officer, was he?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. I mean, when they did Star Trek as the original pilot, it was Pike as the captain, not Kirk, and they were friends. I guess you could say in the original series, Kirk and Pike, they were the same age. They went to the academy together, but
I hope you don't mean friends with benefits.
No, of course not. I mean, friends. They're like pals. Who grew up together. They went to the academy together. But for the reboot, they changed it so Pike is now an older man and he's a mentor to Kirk. So that was a pretty cool twist that they did. Another twist, which some people don't like, but I really don't mind it, is that Spock and Uhura are romantically involved, which was certainly not the case in the original.
Yeah. Well, or ever.
Yes, and some people don't like the romance, but I think they handle it really, really well. And it goes to show you that Vulcans do have emotions. They're just really, really good at hiding it. They're very
like if you ever come across somebody who says, he complains about the romance in Star Trek, just say, well, you got two choices: Star Trek or Star Wars. I truly, deeply love you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that bad.
Yes, good point. Good point. Yeah. Now let's see. Now, as to the villain Eric Bana, I know not everybody dug Eric Bana as the Romulan Nero, and he may not be the greatest villain I've ever seen in Trek, but I thought he was good. I thought he was definitely a better villain than Tom Hardy in
Shit zone.
And better than whoever the villain was in Insurrection. This was who? F. Murray Abraham. I guess he was the villain in that.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the previous Hangout. Yeah.
And as much as I like Malcolm McDowell, the actor, I didn't care for his villain in Star Trek Generations. So I'll take Eric Bana over those guys.
Yeah. You won't like him when he's Ang Lee.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought for what he was good, and we got a little bit of a backstory about him when he's captured Captain Pike, and he's telling Pike briefly about his background, that he had a wife who was killed when his planet Romulus was blown up. So we get a little bit of a background about Nero. So overall, I thought he was a good villain. Maybe not the greatest villain I've ever seen, but I thought Eric Bana did the job, and he was good. For my money, he was good. I definitely loved, in order to bridge the gap between the original cast and the new cast, they brought Leonard Nimoy back as the original Spock. And the fact that he's not just there as a cameo. I mean, he has a very important supporting role in this movie. It wasn't just to show up, hi, I'm the original Spock, remember me? Isn't it wonderful that I'm in the movie? Isn't that wonderful? I mean, no, they give him something really important to do. As he's, passing the torch from the old cast to the new cast. He has a very important role to play in this. And how he meets the younger Kirk and tells younger Kirk what had happened to him, Spock, between Spock and Nero. And then eventually that wonderful scene towards the end of the film when the original Spock meets the new Spock, which I thought was really, really well done. And it was just wonderful to have Nimoy there, playing the original Spock one more time. Wonderful to have his presence in the film. And I mean, obviously he's there to help pass the torch, but again, they gave him something important to do, which I really appreciate. And it was wonderful to see him in the film as well. The visual effects are terrific in this movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning stuff. Very well done. Let's see. And let's see. The action scenes are all very well done too. I mean,
Fast and Furious in space.
What's that?
It feels like Fast and Furious, like in space. Like the action is so quick. It's so like rocketly paced.
Yeah. It is paced fast, but not so fast that you can't understand it. The but I mean, really good, rock solid action. The music score is terrific. Great music for this film, and of course, they came up with a great new theme that da 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 da. Great score. I love that score.
I agree.
Yeah, great music score. The movie looks great. It's directed wonderfully. The acting is great. I think the script is really solid. I also like how how the movie begins with the prologue setting up how James T. Kirk was born and how his father sacrificed himself in order to save his mother and Captain Kirk. James Kirk as a baby, played by Chris Hemsworth, the future Thor, by the way.
Ooh.
Who does a nice job in his little role at the beginning of the film. I can't help but feel a little choked up when George Kirk bites the bullet, but I mean, hey, he died a noble death.
He died a noble hunk.
Yeah, saving little James Kirk and James Kirk's mommy. And I like how they also show the prologue as we see Kirk as a reckless young boy who almost drives that car off the cliff. And then we go to Vulcan to see Spock as a young boy and dealing with the growing pains that he's dealing with before we see these two finally meet at the Academy. So overall, I think the whole movie is a wonderful adventure. It is spectacularly done, straight across the board. Like I said, anybody who has a problem with the movie, I mean, I'm going to be saying this 3 times over, but anybody who has a problem with the movie, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I think it's a wonderfully done film, wonderfully acted, directed, wonderfully paced, great script, great visual effects, great music. I tip my hat to J.J. Abrams and the new cast for doing such a wonderful job and for really bringing back the Star Trek franchise to life in a big, huge way.
Because after Nemesis, oh boy.
Yeah, anybody who complains about the reboots, I mean, what? You like Star Trek Nemesis? You like Star Trek Insurrection? You like Star Trek Final Frontier? Do you think those movies are better than this? I mean, please.
What? No, you don't watch Jesus Star Trek films.
I know somebody who does think that those films are better than this, but anyway.
Like I said, I just don't get it. I just don't.
I mean, the Final Frontier was basically Star Trek meets The Passion of the Christ. Yeah. Well, I mean, William Shatner definitely made his blueprint on the acting front, but directing, no.
Star Trek Nemesis was like Star Trek meets Superman 4, like just
with a bit of the toilet thrown in there as well.
Yeah. So anyway, to wrap it up, like I said, I am a Trekker who has no complaints whatsoever about Star Trek 2009. I think it's a wonderful movie all the way through. I mean, when you look at the Star Trek film franchise, there have been good Star Trek films and there have been bad ones. I think Star Trek 2009 is definitely one of the good ones. And of all the Star Trek movies I've seen, and I've seen them all, I have to admit this is the movie that I love the most. This is the Star Trek movie that gives me the most thrills, that gives me the most satisfaction. I think it is the Star Trek film that brought the Star Trek franchise back to life in a big, huge way, and not deny that. It's a wonderful film. It's my favorite Star Trek movie, and I'm going to give Star Trek 2009 a perfect 10 out of 10.
Awesome. Now we go beyond to Jack.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Yeah, Star Trek 2009. Well, like Alan said before, I mean, it'd been a long time since Star Trek was last on was last in the cinema, and even on the TV screens. I mean, I think by the point of Nemesis, that just they finally shot out all they could. I mean, Nemesis was just disgraceful, and I think the series just sort of bottomed out there, and then of course you had Enterprise, which wasn't very it wasn't very acclaimed either. It didn't get the most positive reviews, that show, and it was cancelled in 2005. So basically Star Trek was dead, and J.J. Abrams, he brought it back, and I have to say, I mean, I think he did a great job. I mean, this is the best Star Trek film. I mean, I know Alan, for him it's his favorite, but this is definitely one of the better Star Trek films. I mean, I think J.J. Abrams, he did a good job of rebooting the whole universe. I mean, I think if they just made a Voyager film or an Enterprise film, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, he understands, the main characters of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and he decides to reboot them and recast them. And I think the casting is doing an excellent job. I mean, Chris Pine is Captain Kirk. I mean, he's very different from William Shatner in a lot of ways. I mean, Kirk was sort of a bit rebellious in the show, but here he's a lot more so. And you see at the start he's this kid, and he's this reckless young man. Like, he's always getting into barroom brawls and just sleeping around with the
And
girls and all that.
fucking women.
I mean, you could say sort of like I don't know, yeah, a single James Bond, but yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, he's like a sci-fi sex god.
yeah, yeah. Well, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and
a very
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what they did with this film because of course you have of course Chris Pine as Captain Kirk, and you have Zachary Quinto as Spock, and it's really interesting how they sort of tie up all the loose ends in this film, how all the characters come together. Like, we see at the start that George Kirk, played by Chris Hemsworth, we see basically that he sacrifices himself, and I mean, and you could tell, like, basically from the get-go that this is going to be a very different Star Trek film. I mean, this film definitely does take a lot from Star Wars than it does Star Trek. I mean, you still got all the characters there, but I mean, this film's a lot more. It's a lot more centered on the action, which is a good thing, and for some people, I guess it's a bad thing. But I think here it works.
yeah, the air
Um,
freshener worked fine.
yeah, I mean, I think after the TNG films, the target audience is definitely going to change for this film, and I think this is probably, the Star Trek film most made for modern audiences, and
The most
it's
divisive of the series. It's either going to, people are either going to hate it or they'll love it. It's like Marmite.
yeah,
It's the Marmite Star Trek film.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I know there was a lot of Trekkies that when this film came out, I mean, I know there are a lot of Trekkies who weren't a fan of this film because they rebooted the universe, because it was more of a fast-paced action film. And I mean, I can understand the criticisms, but I think J.J. Abrams, he sort of needed to pump in that adrenaline, and I mean, this isn't your old Star Trek. This is a new modern take, and I think for what J.J. Abrams does, it works. I mean, I think that the chemistry here is very interesting. I mean, yeah, of course you have Nero, played by Eric Bana, and I mean, Nero is a villain. I mean, he's not great. I mean,
He's a bit of a sissy, to be honest.
yeah, to be honest, Eric Bana is Nero. He's crap. I mean, not as bad as Tom Hardy or the
Oh no,
villain in not as bad as Tom Hardy or the villain in Insurrection, but Nero is just. I mean, this is my only problem with the film, is that Nero is just not really developed. I mean, he's in it at the start and he's in it towards the end, but he isn't really fleshed out. I mean, we find out that Spock, old Spock, basically created this black hole and his planet was sucked in, and he's I think, yeah, he's a Romulan. I mean, it's interesting that I mean, this is sort of the first time in the Star Trek movie franchise they've used the Romulans as the bad guys. I mean, you'd think, I mean, we're already on our 11th film now, first used as the bad guys, But I mean, I think the backstories are interesting. Like we see, Spock is going to, he was going to apply for the Vulcan Academy, but he turns it down to go to Starfleet. And Zachary Quinto, I mean, again, very different from Leonard Nimoy. I mean, what I like about Abrams is that the fact that they're the same characters, but their personalities are slightly different. I think Zachary Quinto does a great job. I mean, his Spock's a lot more emotional, and we see that he's in a relationship with Uhura. I mean, the whole relationship thing. I mean, I don't mind it. It's a little bit unnecessary. It doesn't really go anywhere. I don't really see the point of it, to be honest. But it's fine. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you also got the late great Anton Yelchin here as Chekhov, and unfortunately, he passed away a few months ago. And he does a great job here as Chekhov. I mean, he gets more to do in the later films, but for the role he has here, he's good. I mean, I think the plot itself is very interesting. The way they sort of tie it into the old show, like we see Leonard Nimoy return as Spock, and yeah, like Alan said, I mean, it's not like a cameo. I mean, his character's treated with respect, unlike Kirk in Generations. He's not killed off or,
Cooking eggs.
die under. doesn't He doesn't die under a pile of rocks. I mean, doesn't die under a bridge.
He might as well have killed himself in the frying pan. That would have been much better.
Yeah, I mean,
the oven.
yeah, I mean, they bring back Nimoy and they treat him with respect, unlike Shatner in Generations. But oh well. But yeah, I mean, you got the scenes between him and Chris Pine. He says, I have been and always shall be your friend, and I think, I mean, this film is definitely it is a thrill ride. I mean, it is. I mean, it zips along. I mean, you got McCoy as well, played by Carl Urban, and he's sort of kind of the most like the Forrest Kelly. Like, we find out how he gets his name. Well, life left me with nothing but my bones, and I may throw up on you. I mean, I think the dialogue here is great, and the action. I mean, it is a roller coaster ride. I mean, expecting Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 6 when you're watching this, but definitely it is an action thrill ride, and it does romp along. The only thing I would say is when they encounter Scotty, I mean, I think Simon Pegg could have been in it more. They just kind of find him and then he joins the Enterprise. But I mean, it's great to have him as Scotty. I mean, and it's very, it's very interesting how they tie in Captain Pike, and we see, we sort of see the Kobayashi Maru test from Star Trek 2 and how he cheats. And basically, I mean, Chris Pine's Kirk is a lot more, he's a lot more strong-headed. He's a lot more, he's a lot more rebellious, I guess you could say. And, I mean, it's interesting to see that he and Spock don't get on. Actually, they're not friends. Spock, kicks him off the ship and he has to get back. And, I mean, I think, the ending as well, I think it's a little bit rushed, but I mean, you do have that, great line, when Kirk's like, I got your gun, and he shoots Nero. And yeah, of course, Vulcan gets destroyed in this film, and Spock's mother dies. I mean, there's a lot to take in this film, but I mean, it zips along. And I mean, yeah, Saldana's Uhura. And I mean, I think the whole cast does a great job, and J.J. Abrams definitely does he does a great job rebooting the franchise after Nemesis and Enterprise. And I mean, he definitely kicks it into fifth gear, I mean, and, it's definitely is, I guess you could say, sort of, Star Trek meets Top Gear or something like that, Star Trek meets
Fast and Furious.
Star Trek: The Fast and the Furious, yeah.
Tonight, Kirk goes on a drill. Tonight, Spock, Sahura. and Nero gets killed.
And I punch the producer in the face.
Oh, I don't know if you know,
Yeah.
Alan, we have a show in the UK. Well, we had a show in the UK called Top Gear about cars and everything. I don't know
about it. Never watched it.
Sorry.
I've heard about the show, but never actually watched it.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I mean, the reboot. I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I do have a few problems with it. I mean, I think the villain is underdeveloped. I mean, Nero he's basically nothing. I mean, he does nothing really.
I mean, Eric Bana, he's an improvement over Tom Hardy. We'll give you that.
Yeah, which isn't saying much, but yeah. I mean, it zips along. It's wham bam, thank you, mom. I mean, it's fast, it's furious, it's Star Trek, but it's definitely a good film. I mean, I don't think it's the best of the series personally. I mean, I think that's probably goes to Star Trek 6 or Star Trek 2.
I think technically it's very
probably
impressive, though. Would you say? Like the way it's shot and everything. Like, would you say Abrams is?
Yeah, I mean, technically it is well. It is very well done. I like the fact actually they brought back the original uniforms in this film from the TV show. The yellow and blue shirts, and the Enterprise looks cool. And I think the costume.
The ladies wear skirts.
Ooh.
Yeah,
no complaints.
And the Enterprise looks great, and I think the new theme is great, and of course they had the original theme at the end, which is a nice homage. And overall, I'm going to give Star Trek 2009 an 8 out of 10.
Oh, excellent. So I guess that leaves little me. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much I can add, but Star Trek 2009, I think, is it's a fucking 1,000 times better than the previous film, Nemesis. Oh, God. Take this over that piece of crap any day. I think you guys are right about J.J. Abrams. He definitely has kicked this into overdrive, and he's saying, like, okay, forget all the old Star Trek that you knew. This is a new Star Trek. It's a different take. It was either going to, upset Trekkies, or it was either going to re-invigilate the franchise. And it kind of did both. For the most part, I think this is a very well-made film. I think it's very kinetic. It moves at bloody hell. It moves at a pace. It doesn't feel like 2 hours long, in all honesty. I mean, there's just so much visual action to witness here. I mean, it's really quite impressive. That's not to say it's without its character moments and its dramatic moments. It does have that. There's some really great drama here. Which I really admire and appreciate. But it is an action thrill ride. It is a big action romp at best. I mean, I think like that opening sequence that throws you straight into it, like with the death of Kirk's father and the birth of Kirk. That was all. That got to me actually when he died. Surprisingly, because I mean, Chris Hemsworth. I mean, but I was like, oh shit, this is actually quite powerful. But no, I think what the strengths of this film come from the cast and the writing. The characters are fantastic. I mean, this new cast have really, really embodied the spirit of the original cast and the old characters, and they've put their own spins on it while homaging elements of them. I mean, I haven't seen the TV series, but I've only seen the films, and there is definitely some tribute within the performances. As for individual members, I won't go over all of them because it will just take too long. First of all, R.I.P. to Anton Yelchin, very sad passing. Great Chekhov, fantastic in this film. Chris Pine as Kirk. I like him. I was a bit unsure about him at first. I mean, let's face it, Chris Pine is a pretty boy. But I mean, I actually think he is a good actor. I would say that he's a good actor. Despite his pretty boy looks, he does have a good acting skill on him, and I'm not going to shit the guy. The guy does act very well, and he plays Kirk very well. I think through the trilogy, his arc as a character, I think it's really interesting how he matures. Like, because in this one, he's such a rebel and he basically doesn't give a fuck, but he does, if that makes sense. At first, he doesn't appear to give a shit, but then when he joins Starfleet, he sort of tries to live up to his father's legacy whilst trying to prove himself to everybody else, which I think is very good, and that continues over the next two films, which I thought was fantastic. I think Zachary Quinto is an amazing Spock. He is absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's scary how much he looks like Nimoy as well, or they've made him look like Nimoy. Like, it's bloody impressive. And his performance, I mean, Spock is a very hard character to play, and he does it. He makes it feel seamless, absolutely seamless. I mean, they have made his Spock a bit more emotional, I would say. Would you guys agree?
Yes, I'd say so.
Yeah.
But that's fine with me. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing. I think it's a good thing. It's I mean, I don't think they should.
Actually, sorry to interrupt. I forgot to mention. Yeah, I mean that scene in the film is great, where Kirk, he has to basically get Spock to explode so he can become captain. Like, he's like, I've been emotionally compromised. When Kirk's saying, "You never loved your mother,"
Oh, it's that time of the month. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, you're right, Jack. I mean, it's that scene is very, very good as well. A great example of that, and also just the scene when Vulcan is destroyed. I mean, I don't think anybody expected that actually in the first film of the reboot for Vulcan to be destroyed. And it wasn't even near the end of the film; it was about halfway in, and you thought, "Oh shit, blimey! They're not lying when they're taking this in a new direction. They are really giving it some." They're hitting you. I mean, the film hits you in the right places, which is great. I guess you could argue that. I mean, some people may argue that it is very Star Wars-esque, like J.J. Abrams being a Star Wars fan, put elements of that in Star Trek, which I mean, I personally don't have a problem with it. The film lacks sort of the expeditional stuff of the original Star Trek stuff, but I think for this instance it works. I think you need to, if it was more of the same, people would have been like, no, it's just very average. They've done something different and it works, and I can appreciate that. I like Zoe Saldana as Uhura. She's a very accomplished actress. I mean, man, she's a babe. But, I mean, at the same time, she's a very accomplished actress. She was also in Avatar and a few other films as well. I believe she was also in the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, if I remember correctly. She plays a small part in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they basically do use her as the sex symbol, but, fuck it. She doesn't... they give her, she's an intelligent person. They don't dumb down her character, but they do make her a sex object, which is, I mean, I suppose it was going to happen, but I mean, the romance between Spock and Uhura, I don't really get it. I mean, I don't hate it. I just don't see the point of it. I find it personally unnecessary. And I also think it doesn't make sense because, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what you said earlier, Alan. I'm just thinking, I mean, I know Vulcans do have emotion, but they don't really, well, as far as I can tell, they find it hard to, express emotions.
Yeah.
So how the hell does this work?
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's the only thing in the film, yeah.
Yeah, they basically only express emotions in private. That's basically it. That's the one and only time they'll ever express it, if they express it at all.
In private, eh?
Oh, in the bedroom, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for example, there was a romance on Star Trek Enterprise between the Vulcan female and the I guess the second in command named Trip. And although she's Vulcan and she has to behave Vulcan and not express any outward emotions, but I mean, when you saw these two in private, I mean, she kissed him.
I mean, that begs the question though: is it logical to have sex?
On far.
Well, yeah. The story goes that Vulcans only have sex once every 7 years because of the Pom Far. But if they're in a romantic relationship and nobody else is around, I suppose they do it.
I mean, a quick one won't hurt. I mean,
but don't they? But I mean, in Star Trek 3, they just sort of caress fingers, like that's how they, that's how they have sex.
I don't know. I mean,
Rub my finger. Ooh.
to be fair, Vulcans probably have a better chance of giving somebody an orgasm. But that's another story.
Yeah.
I'm going off top. I'm digressing. We can do another.
Oh God, Star Trek porn going where no man has gone before.
When they told you it was an action romp, they weren't joking. But anyway, I mean, the romance aside, both of them do at least act it very well, convincingly enough. Anyway, it just comes out of nowhere, though. To be fair, I mean, I don't mind in the sense that they develop it over the next two films, well, at least Into Darkness, anyway. But for this film, it was just like randomly just thrown in there, like for no reason. I actually thought Uhura was going to get Kirk, but maybe not. Maybe she likes to go for the more complicated men. Well, different species. But anyway, I think Carl Urban is also a very good Bones. He's very funny.
Damn the law.
He's got all the right quips and everything. I think he just gets it. He gets it. I don't know what it is, but something about him. He gets the part. He knows exactly what to do with it.
Yeah, I actually heard that Leonard Nimoy when they were casting for the film, Carl Urban was so much like DeForest Kelly that Leonard Nimoy actually cried.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's no wonder he got the part. Speaking of the weaker parts, I do have to agree with Jack and the villain Nero. For me, I don't hate the guy. On reflection, I don't hate the guy. I just don't think he's very good. I mean, he's nowhere near as bad as Tom Hardy's villain or whoever the fuck it was in Insurrection. I just think that there was no development. I mean, well, there was little development. He wasn't threatening. He was just a sissy. Like he was just.
Yeah.
He was basically having a hissy fit. He was just yelling, going, "Fire everything!
Hulk smash!"
Yeah. Fire everything! Oh God! I mean, I laughed at that bit. I'm not going to lie when he said fire everything. I know it sounds harsh. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's 1,000 times better than Tom Hardy, which probably isn't saying much, but it just needed more, basically. But I mean, I think the villains of the reboot era do have a slight problem, but for what it's worth, he's an okay villain, but I just think he's very mediocre. He's easily the weakest cast member, but I don't think he's awful. I just think they needed to work on his character a bit more. However, other things do work. The film is visually stunning. It is beautiful to look at.
Lens flare. Yeah.
Well, yeah, apart from the lens flares, but it is technically composite. I mean, by that I mean it's the most technically pleasing of all of the films so far. Well, of all of up to that point, it was anyway. It just looks so much more richer and more like the cinematography is fantastic, and the visual effects as well. You can tell there's been a progression. I mean, obviously they had 7 years between Nemesis and this one, but it was worth the wait. Bloody hell! I mean, and those action sequences, boy, they are thrilling, aren't they? I mean, I do get a good kick out of those action sequences. I'm not going to lie. Especially that one where they dive down onto the drill. I think that one's really good. But,
yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, where the drill scene, where they destroy the drill and they have to do some fighting, some physical fighting, as well as destroying the drill. Yeah, that's an action scene.
Yeah, very impressive. And again, the visual effects are fantastic. I don't know who did the visual effects, but they did a bang-up job. And I also like all the scenes in the control room. This time, it just feels different. I think just there's more camera movement this time. Like the way it's shot, I think is fantastic. Everything moving, like the camera's always moving. There's always something going on. There is never a dull moment. Never. Literally, if someone complained about this film being slow, I would be like, "What? Were you watching the same film? Were you watching the motion picture, or were you watching the 2009 reboot? Because this is, I mean, actually comparing those two,
you could actually say, sorry to interrupt. You could actually say it's the exact opposite of the motion picture.
Well, in terms of the pacing, yeah, the pacing, the complete opposite. Motion picture is a slower film, and this is a much quicker film. But they're both completely different in terms of what they're trying to do. But yeah, I mean, and
Yeah, but you could say that they're the exact opposite because some say, well, a lot of people say the motion picture is slow and this is really fast paced.
yeah, that's what I mean. Just in terms of pacing, the stories are very different, and like this is an action film and that was an expedition film. But in any case, I also like the glimpses into backstories, like in terms of like Kirk and Spock's childhood. That's really cool. Like Spock as a kid, seeing that was quite interesting. We never got an insight into that in terms of the films. Anyway, I don't know about the TV series. Um, and the direction by J.J. Abrams is pretty damn good. It's pretty polished. He has a clear vision of what he wants. I think there is an element that you can see that he's not a Star Trek fan, or well, he's not a hardcore Trekkie, but he's grown to love the material that he's worked with, and I think that's very clear to see. I also think Simon Pegg is also wasted in this film. That is a problem that is to be solved in the next two films, so I'm not going to go on about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's sort of shoved in there.
Yeah, he's just kind of written in there just because they needed Scotty at some point, and like to be honest, he could have just joined them at the very beginning. Why have him just come in halfway through? From a story point of view, if you're going to have all the crew, just have all the crew there at the start. Why have one that comes in later? It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I'm like, why did they just make him engineer suddenly? Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that aside, minor gripes aside, this is a much, much, much better film than three of the next gen films. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic. It's really, really well done. It is.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. Abrams, after Nemesis, he unblocked the toilet, sprayed the air freshener, got the duck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he kept that toilet squeaky clean. But I mean, in hindsight, I think it does what it set out to do. I mean, on the one hand, the demographic is going to be split. It's a very divisive film, but that's just the way it is. It's just going to be like that. People need to accept that it's a different take. You're either going to like it or you're not. So, I think people should appreciate that it does try and homage the original stuff a bit more, as well as it being its own thing. But I think in this instance, it basically brought the franchise back. As for where the franchise is now, I don't know. But I know there's a new series of Star Trek, I believe, starting on Netflix or something. So, yeah, the 2009 film obviously had a great impact on that. So I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I do really enjoy it. And I think I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. It's a great, fun ride. So we had to wait 4 years for the sequel as well. So, Alan, what do you think of Star Trek Into Darkness?
Star Trek Into Darkness. Yes, released in 2013. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Again, this is another Star Trek reboot film that has its share of critics. In fact, there was a ridiculous backlash almost immediately after the film came out, proclaiming that Star Trek Into Darkness was the worst Star Trek movie ever, which is bullshit.
That's going a bit far.
Even Simon Pegg came out and said "fuck you" to the Trekkers who proclaimed it the worst Star Trek movie ever. And
even if you hate it,
clearly,
I mean,
clearly they haven't seen any of the TNG films.
I guess not. Yeah, I don't get it. No, I think Into Darkness is great. I mean, I'm still going to think...
Some people just prefer Tom Hardy porno,
I guess so. I think Into Darkness is great. I mean, I do think that that the 2009 Star Trek movie is still a little bit better. And I know some people think that Into Darkness borrowed...
Alan? Oh dear, there's a bad connection.
We've lost Spock.
This is shit. Oh shit. Oh dear. But I know what Alan was saying about Into Darkness borrowing a lot from Wrath of Khan. It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Is Alan back?
I have no idea where he's gone. I will re-invite him.
He's still showing up on my thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he lost connection.
Maybe Khan had his wrath on him. Yeah, I mean, I guess like we could talk a bit of Into Darkness before Alan comes back.
Yeah, if you want to give your thoughts, just in case Alan doesn't come back for a while.
Okay. Well, Star Trek Into Darkness. Well, Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan. I mean, sorry, Star Trek Into Darkness.
I'm back.
Oh,
Hey.
I got cut off for some reason, but I'm back.
oh, good.
Anyway, to continue where I was, I guess. Again, this is an alternate timeline, an alternate universe, so I'm fine with an alternate Khan, and changing the events of Wrath of Khan a bit for this alternate timeline. I didn't have a problem with that. And overall, like the movie that came before it, I think Into Darkness is exceptionally well made. J.J. Abrams once again directing, and again I think his direction is terrific. I think the story is quite entertaining, and again, like Star Trek 2009, Into Darkness I think has terrific pacing to it. I wasn't ever bored by it. The action is great. Once again, you have a solid script. Abrams' direction is on point. The acting from everyone is on point. Once again, all the actors playing the Trek crew are terrific. Chris Pine.
Alice Eve. Woo.
Oh. Huh?
Alice Eve.
Yeah, yes, I was going to mention her. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, I will mention her. I will mention her. Okay. Anyway, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, and all the rest playing the original cast are wonderful. Moving on to the supporting cast, I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan. What needs to be said about Benedict Cumberbatch? Who doesn't like Benedict Cumberbatch? I mean, the guy, he doesn't copy Ricardo Montalban. Instead, he's giving us like a reimagining of the Khan character. And
he's basically like a hitman now.
What's that?
He basically was like a hitman, isn't he? Like a futuristic hitman.
A futuristic hitman. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I would say so. But again, if you know anything about Benedict Cumberbatch, soon to be seen in Doctor Strange, I can't wait. I mean, you know the guy has an immensely powerful speaking voice. I mean, he's got a voice that can melt icebergs. That you should have let me sleep. I will walk over your dead corpses. And I mean, he's just got that mondo powerful speaking voice of his.
That Shakespearean voice, yeah.
Got that Shakespearean voice. He's a good-looking guy. Besides, that doesn't hurt. I mean, all the ladies in us are melting, So I'm sure really well as Doctor Strange, but that's another review for another time. But anyway, his Khan, I think he's terrific in the part. He has terrific screen presence. He's got that great, terrific Shakespearean voice. He's not doing a copy of Ricardo Montalban. I mean, it's a reimagining of the character, and I think he's a superb villain. He's a superb Khan, and I really enjoyed what he did here in the film. So I tip my hat to Benedict Cumberbatch as the villain here. Yes, of course, I'm also going to mention the lovely Alice Eve as Dr. Carol Marcus, who who's wonderful. I mean, she holds her own really well. She holds her own really well in this story. Against the other members of the crew, and does a really good job. Everybody mentions that brief 2 seconds where we see her in her underwear.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I have no complaints, but
I have no complaints. I mean, if you got it, flaunt it, right? And and as I understand it, it was her choice to do that scene. She didn't have to do it, but it was her choice to do it.
Well, I suppose they asked her if she felt comfortable doing it.
She said she had no problem with the scene, so I don't know why everybody cooked up a big stink about it.
Well, I mean, women and sex stuff in films all the time.
it was mostly women complaining that it was sexist, and that.
Well, to be fair, we had a shot of Zoe Saldana in her bra in the previous one. So what difference is it to this one?
Right, exactly. I mean, and for the ladies, we saw Chris Pine with his shirt off, so there's some male eye candy for the ladies. It's not that big of a deal. And for fuck's sake, it was only for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like an actual sex.
Yeah, it wasn't gratuitous. I mean, she wasn't actually naked.
I mean, no, it's like it wasn't like the Tom Hardy rape scene in the Nemesis.
Yeah, I never watched that ever again.
Oh, okay, can I?
You couldn't pay me to watch that ever again. That's how bad. So Alice Eve, besides being really, really nice to look at, I thought she gave a really good performance as Carol Marcus. I was very disappointed she didn't come back for Star Trek Beyond, although they say there's always the possibility she could come back in the future. So we'll see. But I like her very much, and in more ways than one. I guess another.
You like her for 2 reasons.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. Let's see. I also liked as another one of the villains here is Peter Weller, as who plays Alice Eve's father, Admiral Alexander Marcus. Again, terrific screen presence, really great, powerful voice, and he comes off as an outright bastard towards the end when we find out what his true motives are and that he's been working with Khan. But man, oh man, that he's really.
Oh, no, sorry, Alan. I think you mean Khan.
Khan. Yeah. Now, Peter, most people know him for RoboCop.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, the guy still has it as an actor. Again, great screen presence, great speaking voice, and I really like what he did here as Admiral Marcus. He's really, really good too.
Alan, could you imagine he just enters and then the RoboCop music?
Possibly, yeah, I can see that. But yeah, I really like what he did here too. I like that we get to see the Klingons for the first time. I like how they're introduced in this movie.
Reboot, anyway.
Yeah, first time in the reboot. How they're introduced in this film. I didn't mind that this movie is, for at least half the film, it's Earthbound. Again, some Trekkers had a problem with that, although that'll be rectified in the next movie because they really wanted the Star Trek crew to get away from Earth and go far out. So that's what they'll do in the next movie. But I didn't mind them being kind of Earthbound for this one. I still think the look of the film is sensational. Great photography. Again, visual effects are superb. One more time. Again, I like J.J. Abrams' direction. Once again, I didn't mind the lens flares. There seems to be as much lens flare in the second one as there is in the first. But again, it's not like that you get lens flare every 2 seconds. The movie is more than watchable. I still think it has a really cool look to it. I appreciate. I guess Jack disappeared. Hopefully he'll come back. Shall I keep going?
Yeah. Just keep
going. Keep going.
I'll invite Jack back in.
Okay. I also appreciated that Simon Pegg as Scotty is given more to do in Into Darkness than he was in the previous film. I like this.
Even then, he's still kind of sidelined because he doesn't do much until the second half, but he is in it. He has more scenes, so I guess it is an improvement over the first.
Yeah, in that regard, it's an improvement, and he has an important part to play, certainly in the second half of the film. Absolutely. So, and I like what he did here. I also liked how the late Anton Yelchin, rest his soul, as a Chekhov, he's given more to do. I like how they made him. Because we temporarily we lose Scotty on board the ship temporarily. And so they make Chekhov the new engineer guy. So they put him in a red shirt, and he's given more to do in the second movie as the main engineer for the second film. And I really like what Anton Yelchin does here in the second film. I mean, he was given some important stuff to do in the first film. Don't get me wrong, but in Into Darkness. So I like what he did there. I like the further exploration of Spock and Uhura's romance. I like that scene where they're having that little tiff in the smaller spaceship where Uhura thinks that Spock doesn't care about her, convinces her that he does, just before they go into battle with the Klingon. So that was an amusing scene.
They did manage to sort of fix some of the problems people have with the romance. Like, they did give it a bit of purpose, and they did explain as to, Spock, like he does care about her, but he doesn't show it, obviously. Right. When he does feel for her very deeply, and they're all pretty much, well, they're separated for most of the third one anyway. So it's no,
it's really well done. The whole conflict with Khan and with Admiral Marcus, I thought was really great. Again, terrific action scenes, great moments of drama, and then we get to the finale of the film, where again it's a flipping around of the conclusion of Wrath of Khan, and this time it's Kirk who sacrifices himself instead of Spock. And again, some Trekkers I don't have any complaints about it, and I thought it was really, really well handled. I thought it was very well acted by Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. And of course, that leads to the big Khan moment where Spock goes after Khan in a superb chase scene. It's one of the best chases I've ever seen in a movie. And Spock is chasing after Khan in the streets of San Francisco, and then finally goes up into a spaceship where they're fighting on board a flying spaceship, and it's a really cool smackdown because, as you know, I mean, Khan is a super being, so he has immense superpowers. And if you know your history about the Vulcans also possess major physical strength. So Spock is a great physical opponent for Khan, and they have a terrific fight at the end of the movie. And again, it's one of the best fights, one of the best chases I think I've ever seen in the film. It's really, really superb. Which then, of course, leads to the scene where they are able to revive Kirk using some of Khan's super blood. Some people might say that was a convenient way to bring back Kirk, but I really didn't mind it. And I'm glad that they were able to bring back Kirk by the end of the film, so we didn't have the next movie to get him.
I mean, if you think about it, kind of
the search for Kirk.
What's that?
Free the search for Kirk.
Yeah, really. So I'm glad they didn't have to go that route.
I mean, like Alan, what you said about the super blood, it does actually make sense. It's not convenient because they keep addressing it earlier in the film. They're always foreshadowing it. So otherwise, why mention it? It would be pointless to mention it. They give it some purpose, and
right.
They're also trying to, like, Bones is analyzing the blood anyway, even before Kirk dies. So, supposedly dies anyway.
Right.
So it's not really that convenient. I mean, it does happen rather quickly after he dies, I guess, which is the only thing I would say. But other than that, I think it makes perfect sense. It's fine.
Yeah, it works for me. Totally works for me. So yeah, everything about the movie I think is really, really great. It's one of the best sequels that I've seen. Like I said, the only thing that knocks it down a peg is that maybe it doesn't quite score points for originality, because it does borrow, somewhat from Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, but I think they borrow from it with deep respect to Wrath of Khan. This is not a rip-off job. Okay, this is done with respect to Wrath of Khan, and you still.
It's not as good as Wrath of Khan, but it's a good sequel.
Yeah, it's done with respect. It's done with total respect. I mean, heck, and even you've got Leonard Nimoy coming back one last time for a very short cameo. It is just a cameo this time, very, very briefly, but it is nice to see him there one last time as Spock. So to sum it all up, I mean, I think overall it's a terrific Star Trek film, even though the previous film I think is a little bit better, but I still think Star Trek Into Darkness has a lot going for it. Again, great acting from the cast, a excellent script, tight direction from J.J. Abrams, superb visual effects, great action. You got a great villain in the form of Benedict Cumberbatch. Again, the younger cast as the as the Star Trek crew of the Enterprise. They're all wonderful in their roles. And again, great solid adventure, great pacing, and it's really, really great stuff to me. Again, I don't understand where the fuck these Trekkers are coming from who say that they don't like it. I think it's great. Again, I'll only deduct 1 point off it because it does borrow a little bit from Wrath of Khan. But other than that, I think Into Darkness is a terrific Star Trek film. I enjoy it a whole lot, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Fantastic. Good. So, Jack and Ori, after you.
So Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I mean, Star Trek Into Darkness. Only joking. Star Trek Into Darkness. I mean, this was actually the first Star Trek film I saw in the cinema back in 2013, and I hadn't really seen any of the Star Trek films before. I've seen a bit of Star Trek 6, but I wasn't a huge fan of the show or the movies before I saw this film. And I have to say, I mean, the first time I watched it, I absolutely loved it. I really, really, really rated this film. But I think after watching The Wrath of Khan and re-watching this film, I can see the problems. I mean, I definitely don't think this is a bad film. I mean, you know, people who say it's the worst Star Trek film, just fuck off. I mean, you know, go watch Star Trek Nemesis. Go watch Star Trek Insurrection. You know. Yeah, they're far worse. But I mean, as for Star Trek Into Darkness, I think, it does borrow from Wrath of Khan. I think it borrows more from Space Seed, the first episode featuring Khan, because you have in this episode this film we see that Khan, his people are all there. They're all cryogenically frozen or whatever it is, and it reminds me more of Space Seed than it actually does Wrath of Khan. As for the villain, Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of him. I know Alan really likes Benedict Cumberbatch, but I mean, to be honest, I think he's a bit of an overrated actor. I mean, Sherlock, I'm not a huge fan of. I just, I think it completely ruined it, Stephen Moffat. And I don't know, I just think Benedict Cumberbatch just plays himself in a lot of movies. But I mean, here, I think he does a good job. I think this is probably his best role. He doesn't copy Ricardo Montalban, which is good. I mean, he brings his own fresh take to it, and I think he does a good job. He's like, my name is Khan. He does a good job. I don't think he's as good as Ricardo Montalban, but I still think he gives it excellent performance. I think this is probably his best performance I've seen. And
he is threatening. He does come across as a threatening.
Yeah. Especially after the last few villains.
He's probably the best villain of the reboot trilogy.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think he does a good job as Khan. Some people were pissed off at the fact that he's Khan because he's not Native American, but neither was Ricardo Montalban. He was, Latino. He was Spanish. So
it's a different timeline.
Yeah, and it's a different universe. I think. To be honest, it's not as good as Star Trek 2009, but I think this comes pretty close. The whole story is kind of like Wrath of Khan, but they did their own twist on it. Alice Eve as the new cast member, I think she does a good job. That whole
woof.
I think that whole controversy, like Alan said, it was a load of crap. It was only 2 seconds long. And it wasn't that gratuitous.
I'm surprised nobody asked for longer.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think the cast actually do a better job here than in the first film. Not to say that they're bad in the first film, but I think, you get more of a sense of camaraderie. It feels more like the original crew. You have Spock, Kirk, McCoy, they're all together, and it really works. That opening when they're on that planet, that red planet running away, that's great. and Spock trying to save the planet, the volcano, and I mean, you really get more of a sense of camaraderie and friendship. Like, I mean, they're not rivals like they are in the first film. I mean, it's interesting as well. I mean, there's quite a few Doctor Who cameos in it. Like, well, you have people from Doctor Who. Like, you have I forget his name. The guy who played Mickey from Doctor Who.
Clark.
He's in this. Yeah, Noel Clark. Yeah, and a few other Doctors.
Sorry, can I ask, what was the point of that opening scene? With him and his daughter. Like, what's the pointless character?
It was setting up for what Khan could do. I don't know, but anyway, I mean, yeah, you have also the Klingons in this film. I mean, they make their first appearance since I think, what was it? Well, they make their first appearance, I guess, since Nemesis, because Worf is a Klingon. But I mean, the Klingons here. I mean, I'm kind of glad. I'm glad throughout the reboot films they haven't used the Klingons properly, because I mean, the Klingons, I mean, they were overused in the original films. I mean, they were the villains in Star Trek 3, they were the villains in Star Trek 6. They were basically almost the villains in all the old Star Trek films, bar a few. And I'm glad here that their role is reduced. I mean, we still have the Klingons, but it's not to a huge extent. And it's interesting that Zoe Saldana, Uhura, she can speak Klingon, unlike the Sixth film. But I mean, I think the plot of this film, I mean, the pacing is pretty good. I mean, there is more lens flare than the first film. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, lens flare never really bothered me. I mean, I think J.J. Abrams, I mean, the one criticism I will make of him is I mean, he's not a very original director. I mean, sometimes he is with Cloverfield and things like that, but I mean, he does tend to borrow a lot of story elements for his work. Like, I mean, he borrowed elements from Space Seed and Wrath of Khan, and in The Force Awakens, he would go on to borrow more stuff. I mean, that is one of my criticisms of J.J. Abrams as a director. But, I mean, he does a competent job. I mean, the action is all very good. I mean, I think the action, like the final chase that Alan said, with Spock and Khan, I think that's great. That's really well done. There's a lot of great action scenes as well in space, and you've got a scene with Kirk and Khan. They're flying from ship to ship. That's all good. I mean, I think the special effects are great here as well. It's nice to have Peter Weller as well. RoboCop appear. And he gives a great performance as this commander who's basically hell-bent on trying to kill Khan and kill the rest of his crew of the Botany Bay. And I mean, it's really I mean, I think this film definitely, in terms of the villain, I think it's definitely the best villain of the reboot era. And I think Benedict Cumberbatch really comes into his own. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of him. I don't think he's that great as an actor. I mean, but I think he's great here as Khan. He really, and he doesn't copy Ricardo Montalban, which is great. The cast, I think, do a good job. You've got, I mean, there is one problem, I think, with the film. And I mean, like, with borrowing some elements of the Wrath of Khan, they do copy that scene from the Wrath of Khan instead of instead of Spock, it's Kirk that dies, and you have Spock, shouting Khan. I mean, that's the only kind of scene when I was rewatching it I kind of cringed at. I mean, it's done competently enough, but I think Kirk's death was a bit unnecessary. If you're just going to have him come back at the end, he shouldn't have died at all. That's the only one scene I have a big problem with. It's just completely, it's just took that straight out of Wrath of Khan, and I just don't think that scene works. I mean, I know Alan likes the scene, and that's fair enough. But that's the only scene I'm just kind of like, what's the point of Kirk dying if he's just going to be okay at the end anyway? I mean, I agree with Alan. I wouldn't want it to be like we'd have to wait another film for Kirk to return, but I just don't think they should have killed him off in the first place. But overall, Star Trek Into Darkness, I mean, it's a good film. not as good as the first film. I mean, like I said, Abrams. I mean, he does tend to borrow a lot. With this and the Force Awakens, but I still think it's a good film. It was the first Star Trek film I saw in the cinema. And I still think this is a great film. I mean, yes, it has its problems. Yes, it does borrow from Wrath of Khan, and there are some scenes lifted directly from it. But overall, I'm going to give Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Well, thank you, Jack. So, as for me, I think I'd probably have to agree with Jack, or mostly anyway. I think Star Trek Into Darkness is a pretty good sequel. Yeah, I like it. I don't think it has quite the visceral excitement or thrill of the first movie, but I think it's an intriguing film in its own right. I think yes, it is argued that there is a lot that has been rehashed from the Wrath of Khan, and I don't deny that. I mean, Abrams is known for borrowing a lot of material that isn't his own.
The Force Awakens, yeah.
I guess we'll have to kind of deal with that. But I think they do it tastefully. They do it well enough, and it works. I think the crew of, like you say, there's more camaraderie. They've all molded together, and it feels more like they've become a team. The first one was the introduction. You feel like they're a team now, even though there are certain relationship complications, particularly with Spock and Uhura. Although it is also about Kirk and Spock and how, he wants to try. I mean, because Kirk put his life on the line to rescue Spock in the beginning of the film, and then Spock's like, "Well, you disobeyed the rules. Why did you do that?" And he's trying to get Spock to understand, there's all that, those conflicts and dilemma, which I think works really well. So I don't really know how people can say this is the worst of the series. I mean, bloody hell, you haven't seen Tom Hardy porno and all of those other films. My God.
Exactly.
Yeah. The death of Admiral Pike was a bit sudden, I have to admit. That was a bit like, oh, shit, is that it? He's dead. Oh, fair enough. I can imagine that.
I didn't mind that when I first saw it. Sorry to interrupt.
I mean, no, it's fine. It's fine. I don't mind it, but it was like...
It was well done, so...
Yeah, I mean, it was well done. I just thought, oh, okay, it was a bit quick. Like, it was very early in the film, and I imagine a lot of hardcore trekkers were probably pissed off that he was killed off so quickly. But, oh well, it's one of those things. As for Benedict Cumberbatch, I think he's a good actor. I don't think he's, like, as good as everyone says he is, but I think he's pretty decent. As Khan, yeah, he's good. He's good. He put his own spin on the role, and I like it. I think by default, he's probably the best villain of the rebooted trilogy. I think he's got much more of a backstory and a personality than Nero did, or Krall from Beyond, but we'll get to Beyond in a sec. The action is just as exciting as the first one and the third one. And the attack on the Enterprise, when it goes down, that was really intense. I really like that. And Kirk, the opposite death scene, if that makes sense. The rather calm death scene reimagined. I mean, yeah, it is a blatant rip-off, but it's done well, and I think it works in the context of this film. I don't think they should ever do it again, but I think for this instance, it works. And then, Zachary Quinto, I mean, all the cast are brilliant. They continue to impress me, and Zachary Quinto and Chris Pine especially. You start to see Kirk taking control a bit more, being a bit more mature about, his actions, and especially when it comes to, decisions regarding Spock. Like, when he's talking to Admiral Marcus on the, space Skype, if you want to call it that, and he's like saying, it was my responsibility, leave my crew out of it, let me deal with it, let me take the consequences. He's actually a brave fucker. He's not a dick. He's not going to turn around and say, oh, fuck you guys, I'm in it for my own self. He's actually a very respectable guy. That's where I'm starting to see more of the, not necessarily more of the Shatner elements, but more Shatner in him, but also more...
Fuck!
can hold it, like he can hold his own, which I appreciated. I think there are a couple of moments when the film gets a bit slow, not majorly, but a couple of scenes that aren't really necessary. I think the film's a bit long. I feel. Also, the stuff near the beginning with Noel Clarke's character didn't really have place in the story. I mean, I know it was kind of setting up Khan coming back, but to me, whilst it was kind of nice, but I just thought, well, is it really necessary? Couldn't we just wait until we see him with the Klingons? You know, do we need this unnecessary setup? I just thought it was unnecessary, but you know, when he says, "Oh, I can save her," it's like that subplot was like from a completely different film. Like when he reveals himself when they go to the Klingons, to me that would be the perfect place to just reveal Khan there. I mean, we've seen what he looks like, we know who he is. I mean, all the Trekkers knew it was Khan, obviously, but I mean, it's, you know, I don't know, I just thought it was a bit unnecessary. Like the first one, the visuals are beautiful, particularly with the opening scene, I have to say. I really like the opening scene for this film. It felt like a Bond movie, like the big opening action sequence, and then boom, titles. Like, it was really exciting. It was more of the shit we had in the first one, which I liked, as in the good shit, the good shit.
Can I also say what I liked in that opening prologue was the whole look of the planet with all the red vines and the red trees and everything. It kind of looked like the planet Mars, you know, in a way that they were on. Just
Sparrow.
All that red everywhere. It looked really, really good.
You're right. The score, again, fantastic by Michael Giacchino. The same theme as well. Da, 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 da. I can't get over that. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant. As I said earlier, I do appreciate that they did give some attention to the Spock and Uhura relationship, some explanation as to, you know, how Spock, you know, expresses himself to Uhura, which I thought, okay, you know, at least they're trying to give an idea of how the two of them sort of get along, you know, because, you know, she must have known what she was in for, dating a Vulcan and potentially sleeping with him, but we don't know the dirty details.
Live long and fuck.
Yeah, there's a reason why he does the sign when he says "live long and prosper." He leaves a space. Anyway,
Fingering.
oh god. But anyway, yeah. Also,
The V is for.
Sorry.
The V is for vagina.
God, yeah. Anyway, speaking of the female leads, we have Alice Eve in this film. I know there's the whole thing about her being in her underwear, which, I mean, I have no complaints. I have no complaints. You know, give me more. I don't care. But I mean, no, for what it's worth, her character was good. They didn't just throw her in there just for those two reasons. You know, she did actually have brief amounts of drama, but with her father being the main antagonist, so there was a sense of, you know, she was actually kind of brave and sort of standing up for the crew, and although she did get energized onto the ship, so you know, but that wasn't her fault. I mean, you know, the underwear scene, she was perfectly comfortable with it. You know, it's a thing in films nowadays to sexualize women. It's gonna happen. People need to get over it. I don't care what the gender politics are. I don't care about racial stuff. It doesn't matter about that. It's Hollywood. It's the way it's gonna work. Unfortunately, we live in a world that isn't particularly fair or kind. And, you know, stop fucking complaining. Get your pants out of your asses. You know, we're in a very different world now to how we used to be. And, you know, what's wrong with the guys having a bit of eye candy? You know, all the females get the eye candy with all the men and their shirts off, you know, and the gay guys.
Yeah.
You know, why can't we have our candy?
Yeah, no. I mean, men get objectified too. I mean, there's those Magic Mike movies for the ladies to enjoy. So
God.
So I mean, men get objectified too. So what's the problem? You know?
What do you mean?
Yeah, Ollie, I'd buy you that. Ollie, I'm buying you that for Christmas. Magic Mike XXL.
Oh, God. I look forward to it. Is there a Star Trek version? Tom Hardy in it. Oh, wait. They made that already. It's called Nemesis. Anyway. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sorry for the rant, but the Alice Eve thing is just ridiculous. Just, at the end of the day, she should think of it this way. It might be awkward and uncomfortable for when watching it with other people, but it's going to get her work. She'll get money out of it.
It made us take notice of her.
Yeah. After all, isn't that what actors want? To get recognised?
There you go.
Yeah. But going back to the film, I do enjoy the chase at the end as well. Like you say, that big chase is enthralling and entertaining. And yes, the super blood thing, it is kind of rushed. It happens kind of quickly at the end, but I think for what it's worth, if there was a need your blood storyline, it worked better in this one than Nemesis. We'll say that much. I mean, at least Khan isn't a bloody clone of Kirk. I mean, well, hopefully not anyway. I think it may be convenient to some people, but I think it's fine. I do think Benedict Cumberbatch is a better villain than Nero. I don't think he's fantastic, but he does do what he can with the role. The writing, I think, isn't as strong as the first one, but it's good. It'll do. It's good enough. Simon Pegg as Scotty, he gets to expand his role, which is nice. There's a lot of entertainment value to be had here. Bones is very good too. I do think his best performance is yet to come. That'll be in the next movie, for me anyway. But I still think for what he's given here, he's still good. I can't really say much else about Into Darkness. I mean, I do really like it. I think it's a very entertaining film. I don't think I like it as much as I did when I first saw it, but I still think that it's got great entertainment value. It's a good sequel. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It does rehash some elements that I wouldn't have liked to have been rehashed, but I enjoy it. It's pretty damn awesome, pretty damn entertaining. So I'm going to give Star Trek Into Darkness an 8 out of 10. It's almost up there with the first, but not quite. Not quite. It's about almost the same. So we move on to the third one, and at the moment, final movie in the rebooted series, Star Trek Beyond. Celebrating the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. So, Alan, please give us your thoughts on Star Trek Beyond.
Okay. The latest Star Trek reboot movie, Star Trek Beyond, released in time for the 50th anniversary celebration of Star Trek. I'd like to say to most of the Trekkers out there, where the fuck were you to support this movie? It's now the lowest grossing of the Star Trek reboots. And coming in the year of the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, that's pretty surprising. I think
nobody has made anything about this. No one has gone on about the 50th anniversary.
Where's the fucking marketing?
Yeah, I don't think it was marketed as well as it could have. They also say that maybe they chose the wrong time of year to release the movie, that maybe if they'd released it in September, which was the true 50th anniversary month, that they might have gotten some more box office out of it. Or that there was too much, movie traffic going on at the movies during the month of July, and Beyond just didn't bring in as many people as it could have because of that. There's any number of theories. All I know is that although this movie, Star Trek Beyond, did well enough, it should have done much better, and it deserved to do much better. I think Star Trek Beyond, while I'm going to say that of the 3 Star Trek reboots we've gotten so far, this one is my least favorite of the 3, but that doesn't mean that I don't like it. That doesn't mean that I don't think it's great, because I do think it's great. It still holds its own really, really well, and is still a really terrific time at the movies. And for me, that's good enough. I don't expect every movie that I see to be perfect. As long as it's entertaining enough, then I can still embrace it and take it to heart and buy it on DVD if I want to. And as a matter of fact, it'll be released on DVD here in the States, at least, on Tuesday, and I will be buying it. Star Trek Beyond. I do like it a lot. I mean, for this one, the Star Trek crew finally get away from planet Earth for an adventure, and they really do go out into the stars for an adventure set solely on another planet. And overall, I think this one really, really works. It's again, it's just grandly entertaining, and again, it's very solid, great action adventure. They wanted this one to have more of a feel of the original Star Trek series, which I look at as a positive thing, not a negative. This time it's directed by Justin Lin, who's known for directing the Fast and the Furious movies. Yeah, J.J. Abrams stays on as one of the producers of the film, so he still has a hand in it, but he's not actually in the director's chair. I like what Justin Lin did in this movie. For one thing, it's even though I don't mind the lens flares in the first two movies, it's nice that the third one has no lens flares, 0. So visually, that's a difference from the first two movies right there. Justin Lin definitely no slouch in directing action scenes. There are plenty of great action scenes in this movie. I will say it's kind of a cliche in virtually all of the Star Trek films, not just the reboots, but virtually all the Star Trek movies that, the USS Enterprise can take a whole bunch of hits, pieces of the ship will come flying off, and yet the ship still stays intact. Although there have been a couple instances where they lost the ship. Like I know actually there have been a couple of instances. Yeah, I guess in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, the ship was destroyed, in which case they just built another one. And then in Star Trek Generations, the Next Generation's cruise Enterprise was destroyed, so they built another one. And you've got that happening once again in Star Trek Beyond. We saw the Enterprise in the first two movies take a whole bunch of hits and have pieces of it fall away, but the ship stayed intact. So here they've gone back to, let's just destroy the Enterprise completely and see what the Enterprise crew can do when they're marooned on a planet without their ship. So we see the Enterprise come under attack by what can only be described as like robotic versions of bees. It's like a swarm of robotic aliens.
Not the bees! No!
Yeah, but I mean, it's a really cool effect. I mean, I was really impressed by how it looks visually, but it's like a robotic swarm of bees that literally destroy the Enterprise. And this time the ship is completely ripped apart, and the Enterprise crew are forced off the ship and onto the planet that they've been surveying. Let's see. What is the planet? Oh,
there's not even a name for the planet.
The bees are on my ass.
Yeah, well, whatever the planet is. So basically, they're marooned on this planet. Although not before we see a scene. There's an amusing prologue with Kirk trying to make peace with these aliens, and they turn out to be these real midget aliens. So that's a pretty funny sequence. We got a nice scene with Kirk and McCoy sitting at the bar talking about Kirk's birthday and talking about his father, which I really liked. And then we get a scene at a space station, and here comes the controversial bit for this movie: their decision to make Sulu gay, although it's only in suggestion. They're at the space station, and then we see Sulu come up to, I guess, his gay spouse and their adopted daughter. I don't think it was necessary to make Sulu gay, but at the same time, at least they don't make a big deal about it. So I guess I can live with it. It doesn't wreck the movie or wreck the franchise in any way. I just don't think it was necessary to make Sulu gay, but at least they don't make a big deal about it. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. There was an extra bit they shot where we were to see Sulu and his gay spouse kiss each other when they met, and they edited out the kiss, which I think was a good idea, because that would have put more emphasis on it. So
that would have just been too gratuitous. It'd be too in your face.
Do you want the sex?
Yeah, so I'm glad they took that. So like I said, but I don't mind it.
No gay butt bashing Zulu.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like
The
I said,
voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Oh my.
oh my, yeah.
I'd like to send him, and I'd like to send him into warp drive. Ooh.
So, but like I said, they didn't make a big deal about it, so I can live with it. Other than that, once the crew get marooned on the planet where the Enterprise completely destroyed, again, terrific action scenes, very well shot. All hell's breaking loose on the ship as the aliens are attacking it, and the Enterprise is literally ripped apart this time completely, forcing the crew to abandon the ship. I really enjoyed the adventure on the planet. I also like how they're put off in pairs. Kirk is paired off with Chekhov, and of course we have to make mention of the fact that Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov, sadly passed away in a most freak car accident earlier this year, which is very sad. Apparently, they will not recast the role of Chekhov for the planned fourth movie that they are that they have in the works.
I think they're gonna like remove the character from the film.
Yeah, I think the only explanation is that he transferred to another ship. So they're not killing off the character, but they're just going to have him like he transferred to another ship, and just leave it at that. But I just want to say it was a very sad, tragic loss. He was a very talented actor. I only know him from the Star Trek reboots and Terminator Salvation, where he played Reese. That's all I know him from. But he was a terrific Chekhov, and very delightful in the role, and he will be missed. But in his final performance as Chekhov, I think he's given the most to do of the three movies. Where he with Kirk on the planet, and I thought his performance was really, really good, really solid. I love how they paired off Spock and McCoy on the planet, and watching Zachary Quinto and Carl Urban, go at it. They have great chemistry. I love the scene where McCoy has to heal Spock because Spock has taken like a piece of shrapnel or something in his torso, and he has to do some emergency operation on Spock right then and there. And it's actually a very amusing scene, the way that's done. So I really like the chemistry between Spock and McCoy in this film. Scott's on his own for this movie until he comes across the new character Jayla, I guess a young warrior woman, attractive woman in white makeup, played by Sophia Boutella. And I really like her a whole lot. I mean, I think she's a terrific character. I really like her spunk and her energy. And again, I think she has great chemistry with Simon Pegg. No, they don't fall in love, and that's fine with me. But they have a really good friendship. They have a good friendship. How they learn to trust each other. And again, Simon Pegg, who, by the way, has to be said, Simon Pegg co-wrote the script for Star Trek Beyond, so he definitely had a hand in the creation of this story. And I like his performance very much as Scotty. I thought his writing of the script with let's see, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. Doug Jung, that the script they came up with was very good, very solid. Let's see. Also has to be said, Uhura and Sulu are paired off. They're in the prisoner camp together, and so they have their own shit to deal with on this planet. But they make a good pair while they're off in the prison camp. And then we come to the main villain, Krall, played by Idris Elba, who's practically in every single movie these days. It's like every other movie that gets released, Idris Elba is in it. So he plays the bad guy, Krall. And overall, I liked him. I mean, he's buried under really, really heavy makeup, and we don't really learn the whole story about him and his full motivations until the end of the movie, when all the information is finally revealed about Krall, about who he really is and why he's doing what he's doing. But, even under heavy makeup, I thought Idris Elba was a really good villain. I do agree with you guys. I think of the three villains we've gotten in the Star Trek reboot movies, that Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan is still the best of the three. But I do think Idris Elba was a very solid villain as Krall. So I did like him. I also like the fact that they also kind of tipped the hat to the TV series Star Trek Enterprise when we find out that there's another crashed Enterprise ship. There's another crashed USS Starship crashed on the planet called the Franklin, which is basically a ship that comes from the time of the TV series Star Trek Enterprise, when Scott Bakula played Captain Archer. It's the exact same design, the USS Franklin, and I love that whole thing of how they get the Franklin working again. Jayla was using it just as a home, but with the help of the Enterprise crew, as they slowly but surely get back together again as a crew, they help her get it a space again. I also like when they look at the video footage in the Franklin's video memory banks, and we see Crawl when he used to be Captain Edison, the captain of the Franklin, and we see Franklin and his crew all dressed in Star Trek Enterprise uniforms. That's one of the things I have to say in favor of the Star Trek Enterprise series with Scott Bakula, is that I thought their uniforms looked really, really good. And so we get a nice tip of the hat to the Star Trek Enterprise TV series with Star Trek Beyond, and I thought that was really good. Let's see. Again, I think the action in the film is terrific. Again, this is Justin Lin directing it, who directed Fast and the Furious, so the guy is no slouch in directing action scenes. I really love the chemistry between the crew members. I think Idris Elba, while he's not the greatest of Star Trek villains, he's certainly a solid villain in my book. And I do like his backstory once it's finally revealed at the end of the film. And while I won't say that this is the best of the reboots, I still think that Star Trek Beyond is more than solid and is still great entertainment. If you must know, I went to see it at the theater either 4 or 5 times because I really enjoyed it. Even though it's not my favorite of the reboots, I still really enjoyed it. And gosh darn it, I wanted to show my support for this movie because the box office on it was kind of disappointing. It was successful enough, but it's definitely the lowest grossing of the Star Trek reboot movies. So I wanted to go in there and show my support as much as I could. Finally disappeared.
I mean, having said that, they haven't marketed it very well, like for the 50th anniversary. I mean, because they pay the end of the film pays tribute to 50 years of Star Trek very nicely. I mean, it's in a very subtle way. It does it rather nicely. So it's a shame that the marketing team didn't do their jobs, really.
They didn't. I mean, really, shame on them. I mean, as we've said before, I mean, where was the love for Star Trek in its 50th anniversary? I mean, when James Bond reached its 50th anniversary, I mean, it was a huge, huge success.
Over $1 billion in the US, wasn't it?
And when Doctor Who reached its 50th anniversary, that was a huge, huge success. But come the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, it was kind of, under the radar, and it didn't deserve to be at all. I mean, this is Star Trek. I mean, this is the American sci-fi equivalent of Doctor Who. I mean, Doctor Who is your big sci-fi program. Star Trek is our big sci-fi program. It's been around for 50 years now, and it deserved a much bigger publicity push than what it got. I think the biggest publicity it got really was that, okay, Time Magazine and Newsweek Magazine or some other magazine released like a special Star Trek 50th anniversary edition devoted to Star Trek and the history of Star Trek. But other than that, there really wasn't much promotion of Star Trek Beyond. And I would, and on a sad note, I mean, you'd think that the death of Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, you'd think that his death would have brought in some people curious to see him in his final performance as Chekhov. But it seemed like his death didn't really seem to affect the box office either way on the film. But you're absolutely right. The people at Paramount did a shitty job promoting this film and didn't get the push out as much as they should have, especially during this 50th anniversary year of Star Trek. So shame on them. But hopefully when the movie comes out on DVD next week, that it'll have a whole new lease on life and more people will be able to check it out, and they'll go, gee, maybe I should have gone to see this in the theater. This is a really good Star Trek film,
I think you're right also in terms of the time of release. If you're going to release it, if you're going to have a Star Trek film in its 50th anniversary year, release it around the 50th anniversary, not before.
Right.
I think it, like you said, it had to compete with too much, and nobody was interested.
Yeah.
No one was interested. All the summer movies came in, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, Ollie. I think that the timing was off and they just didn't promote it as well as they effing well should have. I mean, this is Star Trek, for heaven's sake, so I agree with you completely.
Mm.
But overall, all things considered, I mean, I think this is a really strong, excellent entry in the Star Trek series. And I think it's a really good entry in the Star Trek reboot series. Again, everybody's acting in it. Again, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, everybody else, including the late Anton Yelchin in his last performance as Chekhov. Everybody in the cast is really good. I really enjoy Sofia Boutella as Jayla. Who knows? Maybe they will have her character replace Chekhov on the ship for the next movie. I guess she'd be the one to do it. She's a wonderful new character, and I hope that they'll bring her back, as well as bringing back Alice Eve as Dr. Carol Marcus. Idris Elba, I think, was a solid villain. I enjoyed how the movie had kind of the feel of the original Star Trek series in a lot of ways. It does have a different feel to it than the first two films that J.J. Abrams did, even though I think the first two that J.J. Abrams directed are a little bit better. But this is still really, really good. This is still really great entertainment, a really great Star Trek film in its own right, a great third film for the Star Trek reboot cast. There is a fourth movie planned for the Star Trek reboot cast, and I'm looking forward to that whenever they get around to it. But as for Star Trek Beyond, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's top-notch stuff. And I'm still, even though I like the first two movies a little better, I'm still going to give Star Trek Beyond a more than solid 8 out of 10.
Excellent. Jack, what do you think of Star Trek Beyond?
His mic is off. Come on back, Jack.
Oh, Jack.
Jack.
Where are you?
Maybe he went to the toilet or something.
Yeah. Fair enough. Otherwise, yeah, you can't really leave yourself on when you're on the toilet.
Do you want to Ollie?
Well,
Or show for Jack?
I mean, we can. Well, I don't know. I mean, do you have anything else to add briefly, or have you said pretty much everything that you wanted to say?
Let's see. Other than, just to reiterate how great the action scenes and the visual effects are. I guess I forgot to mention that I thought the conclusion when they get back to the space station and Kirk is chasing Krall in zero gravity, and they're like floating in the sky of the space station. I thought that was amazing to see. Oh, well, I'll also mention that I thought the design of the space station was really terrific. I mean, it's actually even Dr. McCoy mentions that it looks like a snow globe, like a city in a snow globe, and how some of the streets and some of the skyscrapers seem to fold in upon themselves a bit. Just really, really incredible design of that space station. So I forgot to mention that earlier in my review, so I'll mention that here. That I love the design of the space station, and the finale was a really great action scene with her crawl in zero gravity. So anyway, overall, as I said, Star Trek Beyond I think is a great Star Trek movie. Even if it's not as good as the first two, it's still great in its own right, and I give it 8 out of 10.
Brilliant.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I mean, I could hear you guys. I don't know. Hangouts is sort of fucking up for me today. But Star Trek Beyond. I mean, this is the third film, of course, in the reboot trilogy. The reboot, and this being the 50th anniversary, of course, me and Ollie sort of reviewed all the Star Trek films. I still actually have to review Into Darkness and Beyond and rank them. I think I'll review Beyond once it comes out on DVD. But yeah, the only reason those reviews were delayed was because complications with my health over the summer. But anyway, going back to Star Trek Beyond, I agree with Alan. I mean, I think this is probably the weakest of the trilogy. I mean, I know Ollie thinks it's the best of the trilogy, but we'll get to you in a minute. But Star Trek Beyond. I mean, one thing I do agree with is yeah, the marketing for this was piss poor. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. I mean, this is Star Trek's 50th year. This is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. Nobody made a big thing about it. Nobody said anything about it. I mean, this film came out, that was it. And I'm kind of pissed off at the audience as well a bit, because people were like, "Oh, Justin Lin's directing it, Fast and the Furious," and I think a lot of people just didn't want to see this because Justin Lin was directing it.
I mean,
And I think
that also the first teaser trailer, I think, turned a lot of people off. Yeah.
But I really, I mean, I'm really sort of annoyed that this film hasn't, I mean, it's done. I mean, it's done modestly well at the box office, but it could have done a lot better. And I think, they should have kicked up more of a stink, being this is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. I mean, we had, like Alan said, I mean, when it was Bond's 50th anniversary, it was everywhere. It was on radio, TV.
You couldn't escape
They were showing it in Sky Movies. They were showing all the Bond films in Sky Movies, and it made $1 billion at the box office. It was the highest grossing Bond film up to that point. And
Still is.
And the same, yeah, it still is. And Doctor Who, same thing. 50th anniversary. Even though I think the 50th anniversary wasn't great, they still made a big fuss about it. Here, nothing really, and I think that's a shame. And it's marketers, and you have to blame the audience as well, because they didn't seem to bother with this when they'd rather go see shit like Ghostbusters. But
Oh god.
but anyway, Star Trek Beyond. I mean, I think, yeah, this is the weakest of the trilogy. One thing I will say though is, I mean, you could sort of, I mean, what I like the fact that this film is sort of 3 years into the 5-year mission. We're already halfway through the 5-year mission, and you could tell like the crew of, like, I mean, I think this is probably everybody's best performance here. You really get the best of everybody in this film. I mean, one thing I will say is I kind of like the change of outfit. They like slightly changed the outfits in this film, which was quite cool. But I mean, this film is just sort of it's an action romp. It's like Star Trek 2009. It's an action romp. It's sort of, I mean, when they said they were going back to the original show, they sort of do and they don't. One thing I will say that I liked is this film definitely felt more like the TV show in terms of the sets. I mean, the sets, you can tell, were sets, and I kind of like that. It reminded me of the original series, and Kirk versus the Gorn and all that. It kind of reminded me of that, and I'm sort of glad they went back with that kind of look. I mean,
Jack?
sorry, my dad called.
Okay.
My dad called, but I'll call him back later. But anyway, yeah. So the film, yeah, I'm glad they went back to sort of the classic look of this film. I think Chris Pine as Kirk is excellent. He does a great job again. Anton Yelchin, yes, of course, he passed away earlier this year prematurely. But I mean, I think he gives his best performance here, and I'm glad that even though this is his last film, he gets the most to do in this film. He definitely gets a larger, more substantial role in this film than the previous films. But I mean, the plot itself, I mean, the plot is kind of basic. You have bees, like Ollie was referencing that. terrible remake of The Wicker Man, like the bees. Oh no, my eyes! Yeah. Not the bees. Oh god, yeah. Or what is this, like Jerry Seinfeld B movie? Oh,
that was a crap movie. That was a terrible film.
that was a B movie.
I might actually review that one day or rant on it because it was really bad. I mean, look, it's not going to be as bad as the Trolls film, but even so. Sorry.
Cat in the Hat.
Oh, God, yeah.
It'll be funny if you ever review the 1990 Captain America film.
One day I'll get there. One day.
Yeah.
By the way, thanks for the comment, Alan, on my review for Cat in the Hat.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. Have you seen
It's a shit movie.
That's another one you couldn't pay me to watch.
Oh, right. Oh, so you haven't seen it?
No, but I've heard the horror stories about it.
It's really bad.
The twat in the hat.
Somewhere in the movie, there's a joke about pee, about drinking his own pee or something like that.
I don't know. There's a universe promote themselves in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to Star Trek Beyond. Yeah, I mean, I think the film is good. I mean, the villain Idris Elba. I mean, it's kind of interesting. You think he's an alien, but turns out he's actually a human, and this disease or whatever has affected him. I mean, one thing I will say about Star Trek Beyond, I think it's the best looking of all three films. I mean, I love the look of it. I love the look of the planet, the blue planet, the aliens, the sort of the slightly redesigned uniforms. I mean, I think this is definitely the best looking Star Trek film. I mean, as for the plot, I mean, it kind of reminds me a bit of The Voyage Home, at the fact it's more just sort of a jaunty romp. It's
just without the whales.
but it's more like this sort of more like like The Voyage Home, in the fact that it's it's more of a fun romp than it is serious science fiction. But I mean, I think the story itself. I mean, I will say one thing. I mean, I think the pacing of this film. There were times when I was watching it with Justin Lin direction. There were sometimes I thought there was too much action, sort of, brought the pace of the movie to a screeching halt at some points. But I mean, overall the pace was good. But I think sometimes Justin Lin.
I thought there was less action than the first two, but that might have just been me.
Oh yeah, but I thought there was more, to be honest. But I mean, anyway, it doesn't really matter. But I mean, I like the new characters. I forget her name. Alan mentioned her, the alien. Yeah, Jayla. I mean, she's good. She's funny. And, she kicks arse. So he's like, my name's Scotty. Montgomery Scotty. She's like, oh, Montgomery. She's like, Montgomery Scotty. Yeah. That was funny. And
she kicks ass as well. She's pretty.
Yeah. She kicks arse. Like I said. I mean, the whole film just sort of romps along. You got your action. There are nice references, though. I mean, it's a 50th anniversary, but they don't make a huge thing about it. They're not in your face like Die Another Day or something like that, with references, which is a good thing. And and it's a nice touch, when they find out that Spock is dead, that Leonard Nimoy is dead, and we see Spock is the other Spock, Sarko Quinto, is affected by this, and he's trying to tell everybody. And I did like the scene at the end, of course, where he gets that trinket from Spock, that picture of the original Enterprise crew. That was a really nice touch. I mean, one thing I will say, they were thinking of getting William Shatner, I think, for this originally, but because of complications, because Justin Lin came in, they didn't bring him back, which it's a little bit disappointing, I will say. I mean, it would have been cool to see Shatner, but I guess you don't want to force. I mean, if you bring back Spock, you don't want to bring back everybody. It would have been a
Yeah,
bit,
don't do what Generations did.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if they retconned Generations, like if Shatner came back and they retconned Generations, but unfortunately, it didn't come to pass. But I mean, I don't mind Shatner not being in it, but it would have been a nice touch. But you don't want to cram everybody in there. But I mean, overall, I mean, I think this film's a fun action romp.
Jack.
You got more character development with you got more character development with Spock and McCoy, which is great. You know,
Yeah, when he says horse shit, that made me laugh.
yeah, that was hilarious. And their banter is probably the best of the three films so far. The ending, I mean, I agree with Alan. I mean, I think that globe thing is awesome, the way it's upside down and, you know, it's in all kind of dimensions. I mean, I think the ending, well, of course, you had the bees at the start, but I think the swarm, but I think the ending, you know, when they're playing the music, I mean, that was quite funny. I mean, it was kind of out of place, but it was funny.
Yeah.
And
like the first time I watched the film, I didn't really get it, but then I remembered watching it the second time. Oh yeah, it played in the first one, so they were kind of retconning that. You know, when Kirk is a boy and he's riding his bike, like that kind of rebellious aspects. So it's nice to see that part of Kirk sort of came back very briefly. That makes sense.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. I thought it was cool. I mean, the song choice is a bit. I mean, I'm not a fan of that kind of music, but it works. It works.
Should have played Tom Hardy porno. That would have scared away the swarm.
I'm a brick, you. Fuck you. And then
Strings on rises.
When Gotham is ashes, then you have my permission to fuck.
Oh, Mr. Wade.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Or
it's like Ronnie Cray. You fucking doing it.
Yeah, right, mate. Oh, God.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, anyway, I mean, I think the ending is kind of rushed, like the way Kirk fights Idris Elba's character and then he dies. I mean, I think the ending fight could have been a bit better, but I mean, overall, I mean, Star Trek Beyond, I mean, it's not. I think it's definitely the weakest of the trilogy, but that's not saying it's bad at all. I mean, I think Justin Lin does a very good job directing. I mean, yes, sometimes there is a bit too much action, but I like the fact that they've kept with the feel of the first two films. I mean, there's no lens flare this time because J.J. Abrams does direct, but I think Justin Lin does a good job. The story is engaging enough. And I think overall it's a fun Star Trek film. I mean, it's definitely one of the more entertaining Star Trek films. Like, you know, it's a blast. I mean, you just said, I mean, it is a blast. I mean, set phasers to fun. Yeah.
I mean, at least there's no Atari joystick in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. But yeah, I mean, overall, Star Trek Beyond, it's a fun, entertaining romp. Not the best, but definitely not the worst Star Trek film either. I'd say the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still got a lot going for it. It's just such a shame that, you know, nobody made a fuss about it, that it didn't do that well at the box office. It's a shame that it hasn't done as well as it could have. But overall, I'm going to give Star Trek. Yeah, but overall, I'm going to give Star Trek Beyond I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
That's fair. Yeah, Star Trek Beyond. This to me was a really great film. It was much better than I initially thought it was going to be. And I have to say, yeah. I mean, I know Jack has already mentioned this, but it is my favorite of the trilogy. I say this because I feel that it feels more like a mixture of the first two J.J. Abrams films, also the original films. Like, it feels like they spend more time with the characters, and it feels like they spend more time on the exploratory stuff. Like when they're on this planet marooned, they're exploring and they're trying to find ways of survival. It's ultimately a survival story, and I kind of like it. I mean, in essence, I do feel it's a bit basic compared to the first two, but sometimes less is more, and I think in this case it works. For me, the highlight of this film was definitely Spock and Bones, their relationship. I mean, hilarious. I mean, the script is for me the strongest of the three of the reboots. I mean, as part of the sort of the villains, but I think Simon Pegg and co have done a great job with the script here, and Spock and Bones. You can tell that. I mean, if it were to be played with DeForest Kelley. No, not DeForest Kelley. Yeah, no, is it DeForest Kelley who plays Bones in the original?
Yes.
Yeah, DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy. I reckon it would be similar. Like, I think the scenes would be similar. You can tell it's them just in younger, and I really like those scenes, especially when Spock says horse shit, and also when Spock and Bones are instructed to go and fly the little pod thing, whatever it is, when they have to play the music track later on. So that's quite good. I do feel like they have given Kirk a bit less attention, which I think is probably good. He can't always be the main character. But I mean, they've given him a bit of a backseat, but he's still involved. I mean, he's very much. They've very much developed him into a very good character. I feel like he's less of the young person. You can tell he feels like he's getting on a bit, and I think he still feels that sense that he hasn't quite lived up to his father's legacy. But hence him thinking of leaving Starfleet. He just doesn't feel like he's achieved very much. But it's this experience obviously tells him that maybe it's better to just stay and do what I'm doing, and I think that's good. And, here's some good relationships with the characters in this one. I think Scotty is the best that he's been in the trilogy. Like, I mean, that's probably partly because Simon Pegg has written himself, for this film. And Scotty has more to do, particularly the scenes with Caylow, I think are quite funny. Caylow herself is a great character. I mean, I hope they bring her back for the next one, which I think is likely to happen. Because of the sad passing of Anton Yelchin. So I think they'll probably bring her back. But I thought Sophia Butella was a good character, and it gave the film a sense of, I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously more females in the film, which is nice. Her character's backstory as well. Like, I think with her father or something, her father was killed by Kroll and his men. So, there's a nice bit of personal drama as well, although I don't think they explored her too much, but hey-ho. Again, like the first two, it is an action romp. It is an action romp fest, and it works. Like you say, the swarm of bees! Like the swarm of bees that come in and start attacking the Enterprise. I mean, it happened very quickly, actually, I have to say. It was almost like for no reason. Like, the attack happened for no reason, but you know what? It was fun. You could just sit there and go, wow, this is great. Really just getting into it. I think the pacing is, for the most part, fine. It's nowhere near as quick as the first, or probably, I don't know about Into Darkness. I thought it actually flowed a bit better than Into Darkness, but, I mean, Into Darkness, there was a bit more going on anyway. But I kind of liked the fact that this was more of a simple film. All the characters were separated. But you do still feel, I mean, when they reunite, you definitely feel that sense of camaraderie, particularly towards the end, during the climax, when they have to chase Kroll into the city. And also, Kroll himself, he was pretty decent. I liked him. Somebody please get rid of Idris Elba. I mean that with the greatest respect, because I like the guy. I'm not going to say I like the guy. I think he's a good actor, but he's in fucking everything. Give somebody else the work for a change. Idris Elba can retire and he'd be fine for like the next 40 years. He's got enough money, he's got more money than the Pope, I mean, God's sake. I mean, I like the guy. I mean, he gives a good performance as Kroll, and I like the voice, but man, he's in every film now. Like, he's in every single film. Just, that's why I don't want him to be Bond, because I feel like he's already getting enough attention. I mean, he's even said he's not going to be James Bond anyway, so it doesn't matter. But point being, get rid of him for a bit. Let him have a holiday. Let him have some holiday time. Let someone else come into the limelight. I'm getting sick of Idris. I mean, people talk about. Jack, you mentioned about Benedict Cumberbatch being overrated. I'm going to have to pull the same criticism for Idris Elba. I think he's overrated. He's not bad. He's not bad at all. He's good, but he's just overrated. Anyway, that aside, he's a pretty good villain who has a decent backstory, although revealed very late in the day. I think the final fight is pretty entertaining with what it is. I think he's better than Nero, but I don't think he's quite as good as Khan. So I'll just say that. I really like the motorbike sequence when they get all of the crew when they rescue all of the crew and they energize them back onto the USS Franklin. I said this in the previous hangout. They could have easily done the same thing in Insurrection, energized all those people onto the ship, and then beamed them to another planet. Oh God! I mean, Insurrection's a whole different film anyway. Oh God, that's a different ballgame. But I think the visuals are beautiful. I think the production design is the best of the three. It's brilliant. I mean, it feels a bit more real. There's less. Well, I mean, there is CGI, but to me, there's less. There's a bit less CGI, which I think helps in this case. I do agree about the opening sequence. That's quite a very funny scene. I didn't quite know what to expect, actually, when that came on. I was like, oh, interesting. But yeah, that's very good. Also, Anton Yelchin, in his final performance as Chekhov, but also ever, it's very sad to see him go. He was a talented young actor. I only know him, again, from the Star Trek Reboot trilogy and the Terminator Salvation. He gives his best performance, thankfully. I'm glad to say he gives his best performance as Chekhov, and he will be remembered. So, Anton Yelchin, rest in peace, live long and prosper. I hope he's resting peacefully now. But I really like Star Trek Beyond. I think it's very good. It deserved a bit more attention than it got, actually. Like you guys have said, the marketing campaign for this film has just been fucking awful. It's been atrocious. I mean, it's the 50th anniversary, for fuck's sake. I mean, like you say, Skyfall had much more attention than this, being Bond. I mean, Star Trek and Doctor Who are both almost as popular, if not just as popular. So why does no one care? Like, nobody cares. I mean, and Anton Yelchin passed away as well, so surely that would have press gang more people into it. Also, I mean, they released it at the wrong time as well, in the summer, when you have a shit ton of other movies coming out. Also, Ghostbusters, which really starting to sort of headache about. But I mean, I did see Ghostbusters, and I thought it was meh, but I didn't really care for it. Star Trek Beyond should have been released like last month in the cinema. Should have been released in September, in all honesty. But oh well, it's what they decided to do. Although I believe with the original two, with the first two, they released them in May in 2009 and 2013. That's from my memory anyway. I just don't know. I don't know what it is, but I just think it wasn't received as well as it should have been. I mean, the fact that it's the least grossing of the Reboot trilogy, it saddens me, really. It saddens me because it's the 50th anniversary. Anton Yelchin's passed away. It's not really honouring Star Trek, and it's not honouring Anton Yelchin in the way that the film should have been. I agree. It's horrible. I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
I just hope that the DVD and Blu-ray sales go up. I hope that they really sell a lot more DVD and Blu-rays, because I think it's a great film for what it's worth. I'm not saying it's the best Star Trek film ever, but I think it's bloody good, and I think it deserves people to at least see it, and have it in the collection, because it's a fun movie. At best, it's a fun movie, and you can watch it and be entertained by it. But yeah, I mean, I'm no hardcore Trekkie, but I've watched all the films over the year, and I've really grown to appreciate Star Trek for what it is. I mean, I don't know if I'll watch the TV series. I don't know if I can be bothered, but yeah, well, at least with the Next Gen series anyway. But yeah, I genuinely do think that this is the best of the trilogy. I mean, only by like a margin. It's not like way better than the first two. It's a bit better than the first two. They're all pretty much on the same level for me. Justin Lin as well, directing. I haven't seen any of the Fast and Furious movies. Actually, wrong. I've seen one of them, Fast 5. I don't know if that was one that Justin Lin directed. He may well have done. I can't remember. But it was all right. Yeah, his direction was pretty good. I think he's much better at directing action sequences, but I still think the character moments were good enough.
And bit up.
Yeah. I still think the character moments were good enough for me to appreciate, particularly with Bones and Spock. I think that was helped by the script. I think with those sort of scenes, Justin Lin let the actors sort of improvise themselves and sort of let them do themselves. I don't know if Justin Lin is actually a Star Trek fan or whether he looked back to the source material. I would have thought he would have done, because it would be the 50th anniversary. But it is what it is. He does a pretty decent job. I don't think he'll come back to direct, to be honest.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ollie.
Yeah.
I had Star Trek Empire magazine, and yeah, Justin Lin says he is a Star Trek fan.
Oh, he is. Yeah. No, I mean, you do get flavors of homage to the original Star Trek, like you said with the ending. When Spock receives the package with the photo of the original crew, that's a nice way to also tie up the older Spock's storyline, and also homage the 50 years of Star Trek. I thought it was very sweet. It was bittersweet, and it's not Dino a Day. They don't go overboard with the references. Only very subtle in it, and they work. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, also the controversial topic of Sulu being gay. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I'm not gay myself, but I mean, I'm totally supportive of people wanting to show that in films. I think it's fine, as long as you don't display it in a crass sense of the word. And they don't. It's very discreet. I mean, even if they kissed, it wouldn't have been that bad. I don't know if the hardcore trekkers would appreciate it, but it's a couple of. It's like one shot in the movie where they show it. It's kind of like the Alice Eve thing. It's like one shot. Nobody really. It's not worth getting into a hissy fit over. Speaking of which, I'm disappointed Alice Eve didn't come back. Even if she was going to wear her underwear again, whatever. It would have been nice to see her again, but
I might see in the future.
Yeah, actually, that's the thing that this film does is also as well. There's no major sexualization for women in this film. I know I mentioned it before in the other two when I was talking about the other two films, but I think only in the beginning montage when you see the woman walk out of the guy's room, when he says, "Oh, like people have found building relationships and stuff and all of that." When Kirk is doing his monologue, that's all you get really. I mean, the Spock and her relationship is still going on. I think one of my favorite lines has to be when Bones says to him, Spock, when a woman says, "It's not you, it's me. It's definitely you." I love that. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Great line. I mean, Carl Urban's just perfect for the role. I think this is his best performance. And, he's very funny. Like, I laughed a lot more in this one than I did the first two with Carl Urban. Probably they're giving him more to do, which is good. In a sense, it does feel very similar to the first two, but it also does feel very different. It's a bit of a mix to me, but that's what I like. It's not completely rehashing what we've already seen, and it's not going back to, and it doesn't feel too dissimilar from the first two. It doesn't cut out all the action. It gives you the action, but it gives you the character moments. It's a mixed package, and I think for the most part it works. I mean, I would say that the villain probably could have been stronger. I think the plot is a bit basic. You could perhaps add a bit more depth to it, but other than that, it's a pretty damn awesome film. And also the music score again is very nice. Although you don't hear that theme very much until sort of the end, near the end of the film. And also, as you guys said, that moment with the music when they play Sabotage, when the swarm of bees come back and they have to basically destroy them through sound waves. They choose that song. I mean, it's meant to be the whole thing with Kirk, like, that was what he was like when he was younger, what he listened to. He's now an adult. So it's like Kirk coming full circle, essentially. I liked it. I mean, it worked for what it was. This is far from a masterpiece, but, if there are problems here, they're only minor. There's nothing here to get angry about. You have some great moments with character. There's a lot of action. It's fun. It's kind of like the first two, but it's kind of not. It's written well. Though again, the plot lacks a bit of depth. It needs to be more depth filled. It's a bit too basic. I like the climax fight between Kirk and Krall. I thought it was good. Again, I just think Idris Elba is overused to fuck, like in everything. He's used in everything. I mean, the guy is. I'm sure he's a really nice guy, and I'm sure he's a very talented actor. But mate, just have a fucking holiday. Go to fucking Barbados and retire, or just have a holiday. Give somebody else the work. We need to see other people. I'm all in favor of having black people in films. That's fine. Have another black person if you want. That's fine. Do it. Do it. Give Idris Elba a break. Give us a break from seeing the same person in every film. There we go. Rant over. Sorry, I needed to address it. It had to be said. So, Star Trek Beyond. That's really all I've got to say. Again, I'm going to rate this one an 8 out of 10. I think all the three films are pretty much on the same level, although I think they progressively, by a margin, get better. Well, no, Beyond gets better by a margin over the first two, but they're mostly on the same level for me. I think they're a pretty good trilogy, to be fair. So, Alan, just to quickly wrap up, how would you sum up the Reboot trilogy so far?
So far, I really love it. I think they're going 3 for 3, which is the first that I can say about any of the cast of the Star Trek film series. I mean, the original crew, the first 3 movies, I only really care for Wrath of Khan, going by the first 3 that they did. The Next Generation crew, of course, only have the one good movie, First Contact. They're one and only good movie. But for me, the Reboot cast, I mean, they're going 3 for 3. I mean, I think they've come out with 3 great Trek movies, even though, for me personally, the movies have gone down just a teeny tiny bit in quality, going from Star Trek 2009 to Into Darkness and then Into Beyond. But, the fact that I give the Reboot from 2009 a perfect 10 out of 10, Into Darkness 9 out of 10, and Beyond 8 out of 10, that's still damn good. 8 out of 10 still means damn good. As long as they stay, if I mean, they are planning a 4th film, as long as it stays in the realm of like 8 out of 10,
yeah,
I still think they're doing damn good. Like I said, I don't understand for the life of me why some Trekkers out there are just so fucking mean to the Reboot movies. And it's all the more shocking, if this has to be said, because when Star Trek 2009 came out, it got glowing reviews. It was a huge box office success. Some critics said it was one of the best movies of the year, one of the top 10 best movies of the year, and a whole lot of Trekkers supported it. And then, fast forward, 8 years later? Well, 7 years later, and it's like some Trekkers have had a change of heart, and now they say that the 2009 Reboot wasn't so good.
I have seen some videos on YouTube. Some reviewers rip them apart. Some of them say, oh, why is it every 30 seconds we have a fucking explosion? Where's the space exploration?
I I don't know where the fuck these people are coming from. These so-called Trekkers. Why they simply are incapable of appreciating the reboot movies. I
I
mean,
mean,
I
yeah,
would.
it's not as if that's the only thing they can watch of Star Trek. They can go back and watch the original series or the older films if they don't like it. They don't have to see the new one if they don't like it. So they shouldn't bash it just because other people like it.
Exactly, and same thing. How they went off on Star Trek Into Darkness, which was bullshit. I think Into Darkness is just fine. And some of them have now gone off on Star Trek Beyond and said that they don't like Star Trek Beyond either, and they don't like this new. And I just think the criticisms are bullshit. I really do. Yes, of course, they're entitled to their opinion, but I'm entitled to my opinion, and I say their negative opinion of the reboot movies are bullshit. Because I think the reboot movies are really, really well. I think they're done.
If somebody doesn't like them, they should at least appreciate what the filmmakers have tried to do. That it's a different take, basically. It's a different style. It's not going to be for everyone. If they don't like it, it's like, well, they're not very good. I'll just go back and watch the other ones. That's what they should do. There's no need. There's no need for the anger.
That's right. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of other movies in the series to watch to your heart's content.
You have to watch the next gen movies, then do it. Just don't drag me into it.
I know. But I'm telling you, I mean, when I watch the reboot movies, all three of them, I mean, I see a really terrific cast. I see a lot of fresh blood and a really good shot of adrenaline. There's nothing wrong with Star Trek having a whole lot of action scenes just because the original Star Trek series, was, that there were these big lulls between the action scenes. There'd be lots of scenes with the cast, talking with each other for a lengthy time, and then you'd have an action scene. I see nothing wrong at all with them amping up the action for the reboot movies. You still have your drama. You still have the characters interacting with each other. You still have relationships amongst the characters, friendships.
J.J. Abrams and Justin Lin, they're not stupid. I mean,
they're not stupid. No. There's still conflict. You still have really good villains, I think. Again, these are well-made films with great visual effects, great direction, great acting. If some Trekkers, I mean, some Trekkers like them, some Trekkers don't. The Trekkers who don't, like I said, I just don't know where the fuck they're coming from in their criticisms of the movies. I mean, I really love these reboot movies. I will take all three Star Trek reboot movies over the following: Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek: Search for Spock, Star Trek: The Final Frontier, all of the Star Trek Next Generation movies with the exception of Star Trek First Contact. Okay? I think the reboot movies are definitely better than those earlier Trek films that I've made, that I've mentioned. Sorry, I didn't make them. But so there is something to be said for the Star Trek reboot movies, that they're well-made movies. They're made with a lot of love and care and a lot of respect to what came before. I don't understand for the life of me why some Trekkers are so mean to these reboot movies. I think their criticisms are bullshit. I think these are terrific Star Trek movies, and I think these three reboot films, the first one especially for me, but I think all three of them stand really tall as the best of the Star Trek movies, and I really, really like them a whole lot.
And as a trilogy, you think they work?
Absolutely. Absolutely, no problem. And as I said, they do have plans for a fourth movie for the reboot cast, and I hope the fourth movie does really well, because if it doesn't, we may not get a fifth. But at least we're going to see the reboot cast in one more movie, so that's something to look forward to.
At least one more would be good.
Yeah, they will get one more, so that's good.
Same with Daniel Craig.
Sorry?
Hopefully one more.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I think he's hinting at one more, so we'll see. But anyway, Jack, what do you think of the Star Trek reboot trilogy overall?
Overall, I think it's a pretty good trilogy. Is it the best trilogy ever? No, but I think, for rebooting the Star Trek franchise, these three films have done a pretty good job. I mean, I agree with Alan. I mean, I think they each progressively go down a notch, but that's not really much of a bad thing because I think they're all pretty much on the same level. J.J. Abrams, I think, did a good job with directing the first two, particularly the first one. I can understand some of the criticisms that Trekkers have. I mean, it isn't your dad's Star Trek. I mean, it is more of a Star Wars feel,
Yeah.
and I can understand some Trekkers being pissed off with
Yeah,
that. But I still think
the sorry to interrupt you. I think the demographic changed significantly. Like it was more for like people who aren't Star Trek fans and like all the teenage boys who like their guns and their spaceships and all of that.
it's more for a general audience,
Yeah.
which I don't think is a bad thing. After
Yeah.
the TNG films, you're gonna have to. They had to broaden their demographic, and I think J.J. Abrams did a fine job directing the first two. Like I said, I mean, I think Abrams not a perfect director. He does tend to borrow a lot, particularly at the second film, but I still think both of them are good films. And as for Beyond, I think Justin Lin did a good job. I mean, would I rank these films like with the very top Star Trek films? Maybe the 2009 one would be up there. But I still think the original crew sort of edge it with Star Trek 2 and 6. But I still think these reboot films have done a pretty damn good job rebooting the whole Star Trek universe. And
for one thing, they're different, and also they're better than most of the original films because a lot of the original films were pretty not great.
Some were good, half of them weren't.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, this was kind of hit and miss.
Yes.
Yeah. Depending on how you look at it. So I mean, I think these films, if you're a Trek fan, I think you'll enjoy them. And if you're not a Trek fan, I think you'll still enjoy them as well if you're more Star Wars fan. As a trilogy, I think they work. Yeah.
What are your guys' hopes for the next one before I go on to mine? Alan?
Well, the only hint that they've dropped about the fourth movie is that they're going to do some sort of, as they say on Doctor Who, a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey thing, and they're going to find a way to bring back Chris Hemsworth as Kirk's father, George. He's going to apparently play a part in the fourth movie. That's really all we know as far as what the plot of it will be. I just hope that it's just a really strong, solid entry. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as they stay like in the realm of 8 out of 10, I think I'll be a satisfied customer. I think the one thing that I'm really hoping for the fourth movie is that it's a huge box office success, because if it isn't, then that's probably going to be the last Trek movie with the reboot cast. And I really love this cast. I think that they're a great bunch. I think they're carrying on these iconic characters beautifully. They picked up beautifully where Shatner and Nimoy and the rest left off with these characters.
Yeah.
And I want to see them in more than just 4 films, even though 4 films is a respectable number, but I definitely want them to go on well into their 50s or what, and make more Trek movies after the next one.
I mean,
more than the original crew?
Well,
I mean, the original crew got to do 6 movies, and how old were they when they did the 6th film? Were they in their 50s? Maybe they were in their 60s when
60s, I think.
Okay.
Shatner was 60.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is a younger crew we've got, so they have the potential to do 5, 6 movies at least. If the next movie is a success, so. I think that's my main wish, is that the next film is a huge success. So that'll give the new crew the right to do at least another movie or 2 after that and keep going for a while longer. But all I can tell you is that I'm a very satisfied Trekker with the first 3 that they've done. I look forward to the 4th movie and hope they'll be able to do a few more after that.
And Jack, what do you hope for the 4th movie?
Well, I have to go for tea in a minute, but I'll just quickly summarize.
Yeah.
I hope the 4th one is as good as the original. Well, no, sorry, not the original. I hope it's as good as the first three. Hopefully an improvement over Beyond, and maybe could be the best Star Trek film. But I'm just hoping that it keeps in the same tone as the last three films, and I'm just looking for a good Star Trek film, and hopefully, if and you know, Anton Elchin, you know, of course they're not recasting him, but hopefully they can maybe bring in a new cast member or continue without him. Hopefully it'll still be as good. And I'm just looking for a good Star Trek film. That's all I'm really looking for. Just a good, fun Star Trek film. Just hopefully as good as the first three. Hopefully we won't get another Final Frontier or Nemesis.
No, we've had enough Jesus imagery for one day. No offense to our Lord, but no, there's no point in the Star Trek movie. Well, thanks, Jack. I believe Jack has gone to dinner, so I'll just finish up quickly. Yeah, as a trilogy, I think they're pretty damn good. Yeah, I like them. I mean, I'm not a hardcore Trekker, so I watch these movies very much as like, yeah, I'll see what they're like, and I'll probably enjoy them. And yeah, I do. I think they're pretty much all on the same level, although, like I said, I think Beyond is the best by a margin. But I think all three of them are really entertaining, and I would gladly love this cast to do many more films. I would happily watch another 3 films with them if they got the chance, another 3-4 movies. It just depends if they can get the success back, which is what I'm hoping for. I think they need to go back to the drawing board and look at Star Trek Beyond, look at how that was marketed, look at why did that not do as well? It was the 50th anniversary. What happened? You know, it didn't fail, but it wasn't the success that it wanted to be. So I think the producers and whoever directs the next one will need to go back and think, okay, that was good. What can we do to make this? What can we do to bring people back to Star Trek? I mean, obviously, the death of Anton Yelchin is sad, but it wasn't enough to bring people back in, which I don't understand. And yeah. I think it's just the marketing. That's what it came down to, was the marketing. They didn't market the film properly. It was poorly advertised. It was released at the wrong time. And consequently, the box office suffered for it. And I just, like I said, I hope the DVD and Blu-ray sales pick up, because that at the moment is all that they've got. But I mean, as the 3 movies stand, I think they're very entertaining. If this were to be it and there were to be no more movies, that would be very sad, but I would still be happy with the outcome, and I'd still be very impressed with what the filmmakers have achieved. I think that the films have definitely relaunched the franchise in a new and interesting way, and it's in terms of more action and more of the adventure side of things, which I think in this case it works. I mean, the 2009 film really made a statement about that. The sequel was still good. I still liked it, even though it wasn't the most original thing in the world. But I still think there's enough there to say it's good and you can enjoy it. The third movie for me was like, this is a good marriage between what we used to know as Star Trek and what we've got now with this new style. And it works. I mean, all 3 of them do feel like they belong in the same set, even though you've got 2 different directors. You've got J.J. Abrams, who did a pretty damn good job with the first 2. He did a really good job. And then Justin Lin, who also did a pretty good job as well. I think the cast have kept it going. The cast have been absolutely fantastic. Again, sad to see Anton go. They've always embraced the material, and they've always, you can tell that they enjoy themselves making this. Especially Simon Pegg, who got to write Beyond as well. I mean, I would give anything to see them on set one day, just to see how they work. I mean, because they probably have a right laugh making it. I mean, it looks brilliant. I think the villains have been a little bit lower key. I think they need to, Benedict Cumberbatch was good. He was the best of the 3, but I still think they need a really strong villain for the next one. That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, the villains they've ranged from okay to good. We've had 2 good villains. We've had Idris Elba, who was decent. Benedict Cumberbatch, who was good, like really quite good, and Nero, who wasn't very good. So there's been a mixture of the villains, and I think the villains need to be stronger. But overall, production design is brilliant. Like music score is brilliant. They just need to do something like the 2009 movie that will reinvigorate people's attentions. I mean, the franchise isn't dead. It's just not. I just don't think it's where it wants to be anymore. Like it wants to be something more than it is at the moment. Like after Nemesis, we thought, okay, that's it. Star Trek is dead, well and truly dead. I mean, the rape scene was enough to tell you that. But
Yeah.
but no, I think the reboot films have done a tremendous job in recaptivating Star Trek and taking it to a new direction. I think it's really good, and I enjoy these films, and I'm looking forward to buying Star Trek Beyond. I mean, in the UK, it comes out 21st of November on DVD and Blu-ray, so I have to wait till then. But I mean, you know, I look forward to watching them back to back as well and see how they sort of compare. But yeah, I really like them.
Well,
yeah, and you know, I do really think that the cast have really carried this. I mean, for all three of the movies, they really have done a tremendous job. They deserve more praise than they're getting. Actually, I think they really do deserve all the praise they can get.
Me too.
But yeah, I mean, that's really it. That's all I've got to say anyway. So yeah, that's it. Star Trek Reboot is done. Well, all the Star Trek Hangouts are done. So I guess we'll be back in a few years or so when we'll probably redo the Reboot Hangout when the next one comes out. Until then, everybody, live long and prosper. Is there anything you want to add, Alan, before we close off?
Just echo what you said, which is live long and prosper.
Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. This is Alan Caylow, and that was The Watcher, and I'm Mr. TARDIS 11. See ya.